Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the second part of the Licensing Committee. I'm Bailey Mike Williamson, the convener of the committee, and I'm joined by my vice convener, Councillor Ian Macpherson. I'm also joined by other members of the committee alongside Mona McLaren, Deputy Clerk and Solicitor of the committee, Karen Engelberts, Licence Enforcement Officer, and Jessica Gild, who's the Clerk to the committee. Could ask to clerks just to confirm that everybody's still back after lunch, so particularly those online.
Thank you, convener. Members online, can you confirm you're present, please? Councillor Harvey
Present.
and Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Thank you. I think we have lost Councillor Anderson for this afternoon's session, but I'll let you know if he joins.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. Could I request the attendees in relation to the Tyne Beer application dollar brought to the table? Okay, thank you, members. This application is on page 55 onwards of your documentation pack. For this item of business, we are joined in the chambers by the applicant, Heather Hutchinson. We're also joined in the chamber by objector to the application, Jason Craig. 3 further objections were received from Andrew and Catherine Smith, Jessica Leslie, Monica Craig, who are not present today. I'll now hand over to Mona McLaren, who will introduce the report and advise on the procedures for the hearing.
This is an application for a 3-year short-term let licence. There will be no objections from police or the fire service to the application. Now, the procedures today will be that you would start, the objectors start first with their deliberations. So firstly, it would be Mr. Smith could start and you present the objections, and then the committee will have an opportunity to ask you questions, and then it could go on to yourself, Mr. Craig, and then the same process will happen. You speak to your objections, and then you get receive questions from the committee, and then it would go on to yourselves, the applicants, Mrs. Hutchinson, and you will be able to present your reason, your application, and also during that time, respond to the objections, and then the committee can ask you questions, and then you all individually get an opportunity to sum up in the same order as then after all of this, the committee will make a decision as to whether to grant the licence or not.
Thank you. Could I please advise the objectors, the licensing committee members have received and thoroughly reviewed a copy of all objections prior to the meeting. It is requested that you keep any explanation of your objection to no more than 10 minutes. Additional grounds for objection or representation should not be added at this time. Only the grounds of objection and representations included in your initial submission may be referenced. Could I therefore invite Mr. Craig to provide details of his objection?
Is that better?
Quite a firm. There you go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. We moved to the House in, I believe it was October 2019. So we've been there for 4.5 years almost. At that time, we thought we were moving into a nice, quiet residential countryside neighbourhood, which I don't know if you're familiar with the hamlet of Powell Mill. It's very small, and we're actually, the Gartwensian Lone little estate is even smaller still, on the outskirts of that. It's only 16 houses. It quickly became apparent that the house right next door to us, that we kind of overlook, was used as a short-term let, and due to the size of the house, is primarily let out to people, large groups that are there for a good time, which is, understandable. So the problem has been that there is little to no management of the property. The owners of the property manage it themselves, and are very reticent to enter or hear any negative about noise and things that happen in the property. We've tried to structure the objection based on the 5 points that Perth and Kinross Council have in their stipulations on how they look at these applications. So point number 1, the location, character and condition of the premises is kind of linked to point 2, the nature and extent of the proposed activity. So my objection has kind of amalgamated those 2 points. As I said, this is a very small, very quiet, semi-rural place that we live in. Unfortunately, it gets visited by people that are there for a celebration, a party, basically the same word, no matter how you want to think about it. So there will commonly be groups of, well, for instance, last week there was 7 cars in the driveway. If you say there's an average of 2 people per car, you're looking at roughly 14 people in a house to have a good time. Now, given that we are such a small little development, there's only approximately 25 people or so that live in our street. If they have 2 turnovers of people, there can be more visitors in the street than actual residents within 1 week, which is quite concerning, given that we just want to live there in our nice little house. The people that live in the street are ourselves, who have a young child, as well, all the way through to elderly retired people who unfortunately couldn't make it today. Basically, the use of this property is completely out with the nature of the street that we live in. It should be a nice, quiet little residential street, and people come to it for this house to rent it out and have a party, basically. It has a pool. It has a disco light in the pool, believe it or not. It has an integrated sound system where people can, crank their music up while they're diving into the pool and pretending that they're in a disco at the time. Now, unfortunately, our bedroom looks right onto that, and the single glazing of the indoor pool, if anything, the reverberations are actually amplified by the single glazing rather than dissipated at all. So if you go on to the websites that the house is advertised on, you can actually see some reviews and whatnot. Now it is advertised as a celebration house. Now, if you go onto the thesaurus, celebration and party are basically one and the same word. So, anybody saying that this is not designed as a party house, maybe being a bit ignorant there. So we've had a couple of screenshots of the house as it's advertised. So, I don't think there's any way that we can denied that the house is designed to attract large groups of people wanting to have a party and a good time. Perth and Kinross Council in 2022 did have a closing report on an earlier complaint about the house. The closing report, which hopefully you've all seen, but I've actually got a copy here if it's needed, does explicitly say that the house must be let and occupied as a whole to one family or extended family. Now, some of the reviews of the house on these websites, there's one in particular that actually the gentleman talks about having his mates all in the house. So it clearly wasn't just let out to a single family. I don't believe that the owners of the property really care who lets it out as long as they pay the money. Also the closing report from PKC said that it was not to be let to stag and hen parties. This is an ongoing problem. We have documented photos of women sitting in the back garden cackling like a coven of witches, to be truthful, with their hen party sashes on. So this is an ongoing problem that was still happening last year. When the owners are told these kind of things, they're quite dismissive. We were told that it wasn't a hen party when we could blatantly see that it was a hen party. So yeah, we also have a screenshot there of the gentleman talking about his best mates and I having rented the house. So as I mentioned, we overlooked this property. We've also got video evidence of parties going on in the pool area, music blaring out on the sound system, the disco ball spinning away. People are clearly there to quite often get intoxicated, have a good time. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks ago, I was verbally abused by people in the house. I contacted Colin, the owner, at 1:30 in the morning via text message. I still haven't actually received a response to that. My wife messaged Heather the following morning, and she actually did, in fairness, get a response then. But basically, the owners of this property seem to have next to no interest in actually managing the property. If they go away, nobody is there to manage the property. There was a complaint last year, I believe it was earlier in the year, and we didn't get a response for 3 days because they were away in France, and there was no ongoing management due to that. So basically, hopefully you can see the gist of our objection there. Yeah, as I mentioned, I was verbally abused the other week, where the drunk gentleman out the back at 1:30 in the morning, I had to stick my head out the window and ask him to please go inside. People are trying to sleep. To which he responded, "Why don't you come over and make me go inside?" Which is rather threatening when I just want to have a nice, quiet use of my house and get a nice, quiet sleep. But these are the kind of instances that regularly happen with this property. So I hope, thank you for listening. I hope you can see where there are problems here, and hopefully this can draw a line under it and put an end to it, and we can all move on with a nice, quiet, happy life. Thank you.
Mr. Craig, are you open to questions? I have a question for you. It's about, you mentioned in your objection about the police have been called on several occasions to help deal with antisocial behaviour. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that point and basically give us some dates.
Yeah, the police have been called. We generally try not to call the police. We try to go direct to the owners to give them the opportunity to deal with it, which, as I mentioned, is generally does not occur. For instance, 3 weeks ago, when I was verbally abused, I did not go to the police. There have been times where we go to the police and you don't get a response. I think Andrew might expand upon that, because I think he did potentially try to call the police that week because he could hear what was going on, and there wasn't actually a response. I couldn't tell you the dates when the police have been out. I don't have a record of that. I'm sure if my wife was here, she would probably have a record of that, but she's unfortunately down in England for work. So yeah, the police have certainly been called multiple occasions. It generally doesn't really result in anything. A lot of the time, the people will have gone inside by that point. Because we are quite remote, it actually takes a considerable amount of time for the police to get to us, if they come at all. So we don't hold out much hope that the police are much use in this. It would be much better if we could actually just have the property managed, and the owners, if they're going to be the managers, would actually be contactable, when events are happening, which is generally, a Friday evening or early on a Saturday morning type thing, when, people are finishing off their party and decide to go out the back for a smoke type thing.
Before I open up to any further questions, Karen, could you, we've been in touch with the police and they've made no objections. Have we subsequently been in touch with the police?
Yes, we have, and they have responded as follows. In relation to checks carried out against each application, we check the individuals across multiple systems and check the premise against any calls or emails for the last year and determine whether this information would factor into Police Scotland objecting or submitting a representation. As such, there were no calls to this address within the last year, and there is no information to suggest that the applicants are unfit to run an STL business, being short-term lets. Furthermore, Constable has checked back further to 2021, and Police Scotland have only received 4 incidents in regards to this address, 3 of which were in relation to the 1 incident in 2021 and 1 further complaint in 2022. Both sets of complaints were in relation to noise from events such as birthday parties and were actioned by the same complainer. Police Scotland have also, at the time of these complaints, investigated and found no concerns and the issues to be resolved. From a Police Scotland stance, there has not been enough activity or complaints for us to take any further action in relation to this application.
Thank you. Do members have any further questions for Mr. Craig? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Karina. Thank you for your deputation. It's a question perhaps for you, Karina, as well. We've had reference back to this this document from Perth and Kinross, which is under this reference 22/11. Do we know what that's about? Because we said we couldn't find it.
I can't find any reference of it in relation to a planning application. It looks like it relates to a planning reference and that's a similar format, but I can't find any reference to it on our systems.
I'm wondering if it's an enforcement document. The gentleman's got it. Can we actually see this then, convener? If it's
We'd have to sort of see whether to accept. Yeah, I think that what we'd have to do at this point is to consider whether to accept. I mean, references have already been made in it, but whether to accept the copy. Do you have copies there at all? Just one copy, a copy of the, or a copy of the applicant, the form, because we'd really need to distribute it to other parties so they could. Would there be any objection to that being provided? In that case, it might actually be easier if you could just explain to the committee in response to the question what it is, what it states on the the title of the document, so we have an idea of what it is, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. And that might be the easiest thing in the circumstances, rather than otherwise we'd have to copy everyone in. It may perhaps easier for you to just explain what the document is and the information on it, if you could.
Yeah, of course. So this is,
And our committee members okay with that, yes?
No, sorry, Karina, I think we should have a see this. This is actually mentioned in the objection, so the door's been opened for it. It's one of our documents. I think it's right that we all see it. Yep, if we have to, I think it's in fairness for everybody, I think, yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We're still open to questions for Mr. Craig. So do members have questions for Mr. Craig? So Mr. Councillor Allen, followed by Councillor Braun.
Right, Ron. Thank you for your deputation this afternoon even. So I'd just like to ask a question in general really. Are you against short-term lets or are you against the management of the way that this one has been put into place?
thanks for the question. No, most certainly not against short-term lets. As a matter of fact, I've got one myself in Australia. It's the absolute lack of management that is the problem here and the lack of any response when things inevitably go wrong, unfortunately. Our one in Australia, we pay someone to manage it full-time. They're available 24/7. As I've previously mentioned, we don't get a very quick response when these unfortunate incidents occur in this one, because I believe the owners are not willing to have anyone else manage it by themselves and kind of ignore the questions, problems, issues when we raise them. So, you know, short-term lets in an appropriate setting, completely fine. I don't think this is an appropriate setting where this one is located. But yeah, short-term lets in the right location, the right setting, not a problem whatsoever. This one is out with that and not managed. That's the problem. Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Sorry, Convener, Councillor Allen's asked my question, so it's done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Craig? There are no further questions for Mr. Craig. Could I invite Mr. Smith to provide details of his objection?
Thank you. This is Andrew Smith. I live at number 9 Gartwins in Lone, and I've lived there since the beginning of 2021 with my wife, who is retired, and I'm semi-retired and hope to retire later this year. The details in my objection still stand, and I might just summarise for the committee the 5 issues that are grounds for objection. The location, character and condition of the premises. It is a quiet residential area, except when there is a party at number 5, and that is unacceptable. The nature and the extent of the proposed activity. Hirers come for a gathering, to party, to let off steam, to scream and shout. There are often pool parties, hen and stag parties have been taken place there, and that is not something that I would expect in a quiet residential area. I don't think that if the planning committee was being asked to approve a nightclub in this area, they would agree to allow a nightclub, even a nightclub smoking area in that location. And how about a municipal swimming pool? I don't think you would allow the noise of a municipal swimming pool in a quiet residential area. And that's what we face. Number 3, the kind of persons likely to be in the premises. They're on holiday. They come for a special occasion. They become reckless, especially with a party atmosphere and with alcohol. they become reckless, thoughtless, then sometimes abusive, and certainly beyond that, lawless. So number 4 and 5 really point towards responsibility and accountability. Number 4 is the possibility of undue public nuisance. I put to the committee that it is not a possibility, it is a certainty rather than a possibility. There are regular disturbances that have been, as I documented in my objection, more than 20 in the 33 months up until the date of this application. In the 33 months we've lived there. And what form does this undue public nuisance take? It's noise late at night. It becomes aggressive and abusive and draws abusive responses if challenged. So number 5 is about public order and public safety. And I would like to highlight this is really about accountability then. What happens if there is a public order or public safety issue? Most recently, early hours of Saturday, the 2nd of March, so earlier this month, when this appeal was known about, this application was in progress, you'd have thought they'd have been really, really careful and make sure that everyone was on their best behaviour. Shortly before midnight, I was woken and then we just closed the window. 1:20, I was woken through the closed window and could hear raised voices and then heard the abusive language being hurled at my neighbour here, Mr. Craig. I contacted him to say, are you all right? I'm aware of this. At that point, I tried to contact 101 and got no reply. This was 1:20 in the morning, Saturday morning. 999 is only for emergency. I made sure that Mr. and Mrs. Craig knew that Mr. and Mrs. Smith next door were aware of their situation and they could escalate and they could ring me if someone came to their door to carry out the threat that I had heard. Perth and Kinross Council are not in a position to police this. I contacted the council on the Monday and they said, no, you just need to ring 101. So where is the responsibility and the accountability? And I become quite emotional about this. We moved to this area for a quiet residential retirement. A lot of the other 20 or so houses in the area, in the immediate vicinity, are some occupied by young families, some by retired people, all quiet and respectful of others. It is a minority, but it happens regularly. So it's not a possibility, it's a certainty, and it's just a matter of when, not if. And I put to the committee that the public order and public safety has been at risk, will continue at risk if these hirings continue. I've given in my statements details of the police activities. I'm rather surprised by the police. I will highlight to you that on the 21st of November, which is in my statement under the public order and public safety, on the 21st of November, when police were called because they had said to us, do not go and tackle them yourselves, call us. We called them, and in the middle of the night, I can't remember, it's one in, documented in my statement anyway, and the police were abused on the doorstep of number 5 when they asked the partiers to stop. And so I'm very surprised that the police have not remembered or recorded that incident when they turned up on the doorstep and they were abused verbally by party goers at the house. So I go back to my earlier question, would you allow a nightclub in this location? And I think you would probably say you wouldn't. And I should perhaps add, I am not against short-term lets. I am against a change of use of a property in a quiet residential area. Very recently, within a mile or so of us, there's an old quarry just along the road. That has just been approved as a holiday park, which will be properly organised and controlled. There is no one in charge. These people who come for a party become out of control, and there is no accountability for what they do. I fear sometimes for going to the door. Only 3 weeks ago, when there was the verbal abuse to Mr. Craig, I believe that the hirers were encouraged to go to Mr. Craig's door the next day to apologise. But how did Mr. Craig know whether he was going to receive an apology or a punch? And that is a public order offence. So I do not think that residents of a quiet residential area should face this type of situation. And this committee has the opportunity to stop this activity. The report that you took the time to go and check through stated that based on the information, it's determined that the use of the dwelling house as a holiday let does not constitute a material change to the use of the property. Remember, that was in 2022, at the beginning of 2022. Now, this short-term let law has come in, and we and Gart Windsor Loan all breathe a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. Now you have to apply for a license for this. It's been a long, slow process, and we've got to today. Other neighbours, in particular, the neighbour at number 1, who was the recipient, again in my statement, on the 25th of November 2021, of a live firework. They were having a Thanksgiving party. And so at midnight, fireworks were set off. One of them landed on Alan's roof at number 1 and exploded there. He is in his 90s, so is his wife. He's now actually suffering terminal cancer and he cannot be here today. Would you accept a live firework landing on your roof at midnight in a quiet residential area? I feel quite strongly and quite emotional about this. I have felt responsible when Mr. Craig has been away on business, and Mrs. Craig and their son are the ones in the firing line, at risk, being shouted at and abused verbally when Monica has asked, please go inside to have your late night cigarette, and shouting and arguments. doesn't compute in my mind. It is not respectful, and I quote the values of the council. We have business heads and social hearts, but we do not forget about the future. The future is, if this is not stopped, then this will continue, and this is undue public nuisance and public order and public safety issues. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Sorry, Mr. Smith. Do members have any questions for Mr. Smith? Councillor Braun.
Thank you for your deputation. I'm going to follow on Councillor Allen's question back to you slightly differently. If the property was strictly managed, with all the necessary controls in place, would you still object to it? As I say, you mentioned you're happy with short-term lets, but assuming for a moment everything was in place, completely strict running it, would you be more amenable to it?
I would not object if there were reasonable controls in place. However, I do not believe that the owners are seeking any accountability. At the end of my deposition, I highlighted the fact that there was no notice published at 5 Gartwinds in Lone. I complained about that. It was then highlighted to them that they must display a notice, and a half-size copy was displayed 6 feet inside their gate. And on that, address of applicant says 5 Gartwinds in Lone. That to me says that they do not wish to be accountable. These people coming to hire that property know where I live, know where Mr. Craig lives. They don't even know where the owner of the property lives, and nor do we. So I would welcome strong controls, and if it was quiet and in keeping with a quiet residential area, then no problem at all. However, I do not think that is likely.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. So if nobody else has a question, I wanted to come back to this item that Mr. Craig produced, which is the enforcement. It is an planning enforcement document, which we don't deal with planning on this committee, in fairness. But you did say in yours, I think Mr. Craig touched on it, that PKC has already ruled against stag parties and hen parties. That's not what it actually says in here, I'm afraid. I just want to clarify that with you, in fairness, because it actually says the decision to close this case is based on the current use of the property as described on the website and by the owner, namely that it is let and occupied as a whole to one family or extended family, and it is not let to stag and hen parties. That's not a condition. They've closed the case because they're advised it's used by one family or an extended family. If you're saying it's now been used for stag and hen parties, then it needs to be referred back to enforcement. But we can't take that into account. I think it's unfair to put that in there as such, because it's not correct. The applicant's point of view. It's not a condition.
Thank you. I would like to highlight really the 3 areas that I already have, the kind of persons likely to be in the premises. If the kind of persons likely to be in the premises are people having a hen or stag party, then they are most likely to become reckless, thoughtless, abusive and lawless. And I quite accept that this is not something that this committee can judge upon, but this committee does need to consider the kind of person likely to be in the premises.
Mr. Smith, I was wondering if you could give some indication of how frequently these parties are happening, as stag and hen parties or other parties. Could you give us an idea of how frequently they are happening?
I've recorded in my evidence that there were more than 20 times in 33 months, and November 2021 was particularly bad. Again, if we look back to November 2021, we were still in COVID, and we were probably, I think we were still approaching further restrictions in the winter of 2021 going into 2022 for COVID. And so there were a lot of people with an awful lot of steam to let off. We understand that, but just please not in our backyard and not in a quiet residential area. The most recent one was 3 weeks ago. There was one 4 weeks ago as well, where there was merely music playing at coming up to midnight, and then shortly after midnight they closed the doors and switched the music off. But every Friday, because very often hirers are taking the property from Friday to Monday. Friday is the start of this gathering, and that's when most people are letting some steam off. There's everyone in the pool having a pool party, screaming and shouting, and then we dread going to bed, and when we're closing our curtains and look out, and if we can still see the lights on in the pool enclosure, which is inside and the central part of the house, if the lights are still on in there, that means we're probably heading for some noise at some point that night.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Smith? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Can I just ask you, do you have any contact details for either Mr. or Mrs. Hutchinson in terms of like a mobile phone or a landline number? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I have, I think, the mobile number of both of them from 2 years ago. I have not contacted them directly since the November 2021 incident, when the police advised me not to get in touch with the house, not to contact them, but to contact the police on matters of public nuisance.
Any further questions for Mr. Smith? Nothing online. Karen, could you explain about public notice for us, please?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify one point there regarding the public notice. When we received the letter of objection, we did contact the applicant, who advised that they had posted it on their front door. We advised them how to correctly post the notice, and it was reposted on the 23rd of October 2023, just so that you know the applicant had reposted.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Could I now therefore invite, let me see, Ms. Hutchinson to provide details of the application? Oh, I do apologize.
No, thank you. Yes, I acknowledge that a notice was posted. It was 6 feet inside the boundary, so you have to trespass onto the property in order to go and read it. It was illegible from the pavement. It was a reduced, so your form is an A4 form. It was reduced by 50%, so it was an A5 piece of paper, and it was incomplete. It did not include the address of the owner. For address of owner, it said 5 Gartwin's in Lone. So I contend that they have still not displayed a proper notice. And I wish this to be recorded as indicative of their inability to follow the simple processes. And I think they saw it as a way to not attract attention.
Okay, could I therefore invite Ms Hutchinson to provide details of the application and respond to their objections?
Just in case I forget, regarding the notice, I took advice on putting my home address, and I was advised legally that it was not required and that I could put care of my property so that anyone could contact me. And I had also read on many occasions people suffering verbal and physical abuse at their home front doors, and I did not want to invite that. All of the local residents are known to me, and all of them would have known for the 13 years that we've operated the property. So I think what I'm about to detail will underline that I've not flouted any regulations. We purchased Tina Bianic 5 Gartwin's in Lone, Powmill 22 years ago and lived happily as a family until my husband Colin's employment status changed and we could no longer afford to live there. Our children at that time were 14, 12 and 9. After trying without success for 18 months to sell the property, we moved out and into rented accommodation where we remained for 10 years. Our holiday let business is our main source of income, and we have run the house as a holiday let since the 2nd of April 2012. We are delighted to bring income to the many local businesses that are mentioned in my pre-arrival email. I personally manage the property and welcome all guests on arrival. Prior to arrival, the guests receive a welcome email which clearly states the house rules and regulations, which are again reiterated in a pre-arrival telephone conversation and also underlined in the to the full party on arrival so that there can be no dubiety surrounding expectations of conduct whilst at the property. Now, I have copies of my welcome email that goes out to the guests, and at the end of it, you'll see a link so that you can get onto the website, and I would really appreciate if the council could later on take time to consider and to look at what is actually said on the property website. I consistently achieve 9.8 out of 10 from customer reviews until recently when the scoring was changed to 5 and I now sit at 5 out of 5. I also consistently receive the annual Customer Choice Award, which is awarded to a very small percentage of properties. The property is gated and sits centrally in 1/3 of an acre. We have 2 driveways providing parking for 8 to 10 cars. The property is divided from Mr. Smith's property by 6-foot fencing and tall evergreen trees. It is divided from Monica and Jason Craig's property by 6-foot fencing and hedges. This ensures privacy for both our neighbours and our guests. Jessica Leslie's property sits approximately 15 metres from our property on the opposite side of the street. The house is advertised by cottages.com, who also manage the bookings and finance. The house is let for 8 peak weeks per year. Thereafter, it is let for 2 to 3 night weekend, short breaks, and sometimes for 4 night midweek breaks. The occupancy level has been 51% and declining this year with the cost of living crisis. The house is let for 186 nights out of 365. I have had the pleasure of welcoming family groups of friends, adults and children with special needs along with their carers, and many families booking for that extra special occasion, be it first birthday all the way up to 95th birthday celebration. As the pool temperature is set to 29/30 degrees, many babies have their first swims there. I do not allow hen or stag parties. Now I'm going to deal with each of the complaints person by person. There are 4 complaints, one from Andrew Smith, one from Jessica Leslie, one from Monica and one from Jason Craig, both of whom inhabit one house. So that's 3 households and 4 complaints. And I'll deal with each complaint point by point. Complaint 1, we show blatant disregard for due process of PKC by waiting until the last possible date to submit our application. The fact that we have submitted the application within the required timeframe proves that we show due regard for the process, and we welcome the process furthermore. Complaint 2, Mr Smith alleges that PKC has already ruled against stag and hen parties in a written report from PKC Planning Department in January 22. He states that one such hen party took place 17 months later on May the 19th, 2023. And my answer to this, the first we learned of this report was when we received these objections in October 23. As we had no knowledge whatsoever of this report, we contacted Mark Dunlop from PKC Planning Department October 23 for information and clarification. We received a reply from Mr Dunlop stating the following, and the email for the council to be viewed, I've forwarded on to Karen, and Karen can distribute if required. 1, there is no case to answer. 2, the reason that we had not been contacted by PKC is that no action was required. We took the decision of our own volition to state in our booking information that we did not accept stag or hen parties, and we imposed a 9 p.m. pool use limit. It certainly was not a ruling by PKC. We did not believe that there was undue noise coming from the double, not single glazed windows of the pool room, but nevertheless, we imposed the 9 p.m. pool use restriction as one of our many endeavours to placate the neighbours. Complaint 3, nature and extent of activity. Mr Smith alleges that the swimming pool is the source of excessive and disturbing noise levels measuring between 60 and 80 decibels from the pool doors of our property. If this be the case, why is there no record of any complaint or documented decibel recording from Perth and Kinross Environmental Health Department? This is the due process whereby excessive noise is monitored. Mr Smith further alleges that the noise levels rise when the doors next to the pool are opened. These doors are never opened. The guest has no key to open these doors, and the primary reason is safety, but additionally they would bring into the pool dirt and grass from the garden, which would be unhygienic. You're either in the pool room or you're in the garden. Guests cannot move freely between the two. Complaint number 4. Mr Smith then goes on to allege that there is neither risk assessment nor effective safe operating procedures for the swimming pool. How Mr Smith has reached this conclusion, I do not know. The guests receive full instructions on safe use of the swimming pool in their welcome email, and this is further restated in a telephone conversation and again at point of arrival when I meet the full party and welcome them to the house. A further allegation is made that the pool cannot be isolated from the bedrooms overnight, and it can only be a matter of time before there is a serious accident and perhaps a fatality, as there is a major risk of drowning. Now, at this point, I'd just like to come off of my careful notes and say that when Mr Smith moved into the area, I took the time to go and introduce myself to him. I sent him an email there and then, which had at the footer my email address and also my telephone number. He asked me straight away, could I cut down certain trees? And it became clear that Mr Smith was going to be quite a force to be reckoned with. I respectfully declined to cut down certain trees, which had been there longer than all of the houses. Monica also communicated to me at that point that she had been approached, as had other neighbours, to cut down certain trees. They did cut down the trees, but they wished they hadn't. And she said, I think we're going to have a problem with this guy. And I'm stating that absolutely factually, and I have text to back this up. So I'll just go back. I'm actually shaking. So this is grossly inaccurate. The pool can only be accessed from one lockable door from the hallway, and the key is given to the lead guest who is advised of the safe storage place for it. And also Mr Smith has never been into the house or into the pool. So all supposition. The pool can only be accessed from one lockable door from the hallway, and the key is given to the lead guest who is advised of the safe storage place for it to avoid it getting into the hands of children. The next allegation is that a risk of chemical poisoning. Firstly, this pool is operated to a very high standard. It has a separate pump room, a backwash facility, a drainage facility, an air and a water heater, and the poor water filter runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is backwashed every second day by me, and the chemical water balance is checked for pH and chlorine levels every second day by me. if I'm not in attendance by my husband. And we, in addition to this, we also have a 24-hour call-out contract with JetPool Maintenance. Is it not significant that in 13 years of operation, there has been no safety incidents, no skin complaints, no chemical injuries, and certainly no fatalities, but rather 5-star reviews from very happy guests? These allegations made here in this public forum are absolutely scurrilous. Complaint 5, the next allegation is regarding a hen party that allegedly took place on May the 19th, 2023. I was contacted at 7 p.m. in the evening by Monica Craig, Jason's wife, regarding this, and I contacted the guest immediately, underlining that under no circumstances did I allow hen parties, and that my understanding was that this was a family gathering of 2 generations of ladies. They immediately confirmed that this was not a hen party and that the sashes were merely a bit of fun, as one of the sisters had expressly said they didn't want a hen party of any nature. I advised the group of guests that whilst there was no noise issue, my neighbour was concerned that there would be rowdy noise later that evening. They apologised profusely and offered to go round and speak with the neighbour, but I said that I'd pass on their apology instead. I communicated all of this in detail to Monica and also advised that I would drive round to the property. We live 10 minutes from the property after 10 p.m. to check noise levels, which I did, and there was no noise whatsoever. I text Monica, who confirmed that all was well and quiet, and then thanked me for always responding to any concerns immediately. Again, I'm happy to share this text communication with the council should proof be required. Andrew did not contact me regarding this matter, neither was he involved in the communications, but he has chosen to add this to his list of complaints. Complaint 6, the possibility of undue public nuisance. Screaming, shouting, swearing and loud noise in the evenings. If this was the case, why do we have no record of this complaint from other neighbours, no communications from environmental health and no official monitoring of alleged noise? Complaint 7, Mr. Smith further alleges that the police were called 20 times in 33 months and were threatened, subjected to abusive language and threatening behaviour, likely to cause a breach of the police. If this allegation is correct, why have the police come back and advised that there is nothing to report? Surely if this had happened 20 times in 33 months, as is alleged by Mr. Smith, the police would surely have taken action on a number of occasions. The only occasion that I have dealings with the police was on the 15th of November, when my guests advised me that Mr. Smith was using aggressive and threatening behaviour towards them. A record of his abusive interactions with my guests is available should the committee wish to view it. These guests were very close to bringing an action against Mr. Smith. I requested that they didn't do this for the sake of my neighbour relations, and it was I who contacted the police on that occasion and had them speak to Mr. Smith and warn him about his abusive and threatening behaviour towards my guests. With regard to Mr. Smith's summary that the property is not suitable for a holiday let, I would like to state that we ran the property for 9 years without issue, incident, accident or complaint before Mr. Smith purchased his house. The problem, therefore, does not lie with the property being unsuitable for holiday letting. The problem is with Mr. Smith is willing to use inaccurate and unsubstantiated allegations in his endeavours to have it closed down. I also have on text communication from Monica that Mr. Smith had advised them that he once before lived next to a holiday let and had it closed down. And although she isn't here, I'll now deal with Jessica Leslie's complaints. Complaint 1, this references a planning matter which was opened in January 22, investigated and closed with no action being required. We've already dealt with this. The same complaint is repeated in the objections from both Monica and Jason Craig. Complaint 2, regarding the posting of the notice, it was posted both on the front gate and on the front door. The front gate is not 6 feet from the pavement. The front gate is at the front door. When the gates are opened, they are sitting there. That is not 6 feet. Anyone could have seen that. And for the initial 21 days, it was posted on the front door, which can be seen from the street, but I was very happy to post it for a further 21 days. Jessica complains that guests arrive by minibus or taxi into the evening hours. I submit that there is absolutely nothing wrong with travelling by minibus or taxi. Complaint 3, visiting guests in the garden, visiting guests gather in the garden to smoke or chat. If there are any smokers within the party, we request that they smoke outdoors, as this is a no smoking property. Complaint 4, the kind of persons likely to be on the premises and the possibility of undue public nuisance is cause for objection. Whilst Jessica raises the possibility of public nuisance, in 13 years there has never been any charge levelled against us or our guests, and this is grossly prejudicial. Complaint 5, public order and safety. Once again, Jessica complains that the mix of guests poses a security and public health risk to the permanent properties and is not in keeping with the community of retirees and families. Once again, this is grossly prejudicial. How was this conclusion reached? There have been no security issues, no public health risks, and as indicated in my previous references to Mr. Smith's complaint regarding health risk, there are no complaints from environmental health. May it be noted that up until this written objection, Jessica Leslie has raised no complaint whatsoever with me or with my husband, and she has my phone number and sees me at the property regularly, and prior to these objections, we chatted regularly in a neighbourly way. I'll now deal with Jason Craig's complaints. Complaint 1, Mr. Craig's first complaint is that 26 strangers coming and going each week for a street that has a long-term population of closer to 30 is highly unsettling, with the average number of people per household being 2 or 3. Mr. Craig's deduction is incorrect. He presupposes that every group consists of 13 people, when in actual fact there are often 2 or 4 people visiting the property, not the 13. The average group size is 7 people. I think at one point somebody mentioned 7 cars, which means, or 8 cars, which means 16 people. The property is never ever let to any more than 13 people. It's often less than 13 people. And whenever the guests are there, I say, whilst at the property, will you have anyone else visiting the property? Because the property is insured and let on the proviso that it's 13 people and no more. And on a couple of occasions, guests have asked, would it be a possibility if Grandad X or Auntie Y can visit on the Saturday or Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours? And I'll say yes, as long as they don't use the pool. But I have only on 2 occasions been asked, and I always ask, do you have any plans to welcome any other guests? So I don't say you cannot. I ask them, do you have any plans to welcome any additional people to the property? It's 13 and it remains 13. So he presupposes that every group consists of 13 people, when in actual fact, the average group size is 7 people. With an occupancy level of 51%, that's 186 out of 365 nights, with an average number of people per visit being 7. This comes to an average of 3.5 people inhabiting the property per day. This is no more than a small family. Complaint 2, also raised in his objection, is an elderly couple and a family with 1 young child of 7. If the elderly couple mentioned is the couple to the north of the property, Alan and Ruth Briscoe, they have never raised any complaint in 13 years. They have our phone number and have always been very supportive. They were neighbours for a very long time. The family with 1 young child of 7 is themselves. Complaint 3. Mr. Craig states that our holiday let adversely affects the character and amenity of the local area. In this case, the amenity is my house. There is no communal area in the street. There is no trespassing onto neighbours' property. Everything about my business is contained in my own grounds. And whilst my 2 drives can accommodate probably 10 cars, I always ask, and there are no double yellow lines on the street, I always ask, can the guests respectfully keep all of the cars in the drive? And at times when somebody might need past somebody else, somebody might pull out onto the road, let somebody else out, but I always respectfully request that people use the drives. If on the odd occasion they've parked on the street, there are no double lines. It's a wide road, and again, I'm not contravening any laws. I'm sure that other visitors to the street are not monitored, whether they be cleaners or friends visiting. Complaint 4, Mr. Craig's next objection is with respect to 2 favourable reviews that we received. The question arises, what constitutes family? I have at no point in my house information said that I would not accept groups of friends as part of a booking. At point of booking, I always ask what the purpose of the gathering is. Mr. Craig's objection is with respect to a group of friends, all older couples, none with children who have been meeting annually for 35 years. The reference to breach of planning is inaccurate because it states that I am required to run my business according to the terms set out on the website, which I continue to do. Complaint 4. Mr. Craig then alleges that glass bottles are disposed of in PKC bins. This is again inaccurate. No glass bottles are disposed of in PKC bins, as all glass is collected in a box in the kitchen, and we dispose of the glass at the recycling centre on changeover day, during the day and never at night. And in many cases, the guests will actually take their glass bottles home. We pay for a commercial waste uplift, and PKC are very strict as to what it is permitted to be disposed of in the bins, and our bins are all marked accordingly with stickers provided by PKC. There is also recycling and bin information in the welcome letter and also in the kitchen, clearly visible. Mr. Craig complains that our bin storage is located next to their bedrooms. Our bins are stored in the far corner of our garden, adjacent to the main road and nowhere near Mr. Craig's bedroom. Complaint 5. Delay in response when we are contacted with issues. Jason Craig has not contacted me once with any issue whatsoever. Complaint 6. Mr. Craig alleges that he has been required to call police on several occasions to deal with antisocial behaviour. This is the first time we have been made aware of this, and there is no record of any such activity from environmental health or police. If there is ever an issue, Monica makes immediate contact with me and I resolve it. In all of the communications that Monica and I have had, there is no reference whatsoever to antisocial behaviour, and I have all of those communications in text format. Complaint 7, notice not posted. We were advised that a neighbour complained saying it was not visible, so we reposted it for a further 21 days. For further 21 days. And just before I go on to Monica Craig, which is the last of the objectors, there is no socket in the pool area. There are no speakers in the pool area. When we lived in the house, there was a Bang & Olufsen system that went throughout the house. We disconnected it all. There is one television in the family room. There is one television in the front lounge, and there is an old style CD and tape deck there with a selection of CDs. There is no plug point in the pool room. That would not be safe. People could be electrocuted, and there is absolutely no disco ball and no place to plug it in. I would really welcome seeing the alleged video. Monica Craig. All of Monica's complaints mirror her husband's, so I will not repeat myself unnecessarily, but I will deal with 3 accusations. Number 1, on occasions where the owners have been contacted regarding issues, there have regularly been several days delay in responding, indicating that the owners are unable to attend or to contact the guests. I can show the committee every correspondence that I have had with Monica, all of which has been dealt with immediately and to her satisfaction. There is one exception that I would really like to draw attention to, and Monica has accused me of having no management whatsoever in place on the basis of this occasion. I was on holiday with my son for 4 days last summer, and due to the time difference, I did not see her late message till morning. She had then emailed my husband, but because it was an email rather than a phone call, and she does have Colin's mobile number also, it wasn't picked up that night. In the early morning at 7 AM, when I contacted her, she said she'd spoken to the guests and asked them not to chat while smoking at the back door and to take their conversations inside. She advised me that they had done so and all was well, and wished me a very happy holiday with my son. To use this one example as a statement that we have no property management in place whatsoever is appalling. My husband and I holiday separately so that there is always one of us in attendance. For our guests and on the annual occasion that we holiday together, the property is closed. Complaint 2 regarding fireworks. In 13 years, there was one occasion where a guest broke the house rules and set off a few fireworks on the lawn at 10 PM, not as alleged at 12. I was alerted and stopped this immediately. Complaint 3. Regarding the allegation that Monica has called the police on several occasions, she has not once advised me of this. I also believe that if the police had been called, then the guest would have advised me additionally, the guest would have advised me of this. At this point, and additionally, there's no police report. At this point, I'll pause.
Thank you, Ms Hutchinson. Could I just remind everybody, just if it's possible, I know you've probably got disagreements, but if you could just try and sit quietly and respect each other's views. Okay, thank you. Could I, do members have any questions for Ms Hutchinson, please? Councillor Lang, Councillor Braun, and Councillor McPherson third. Okay.
Thank you for your deputation. Do you need a minute? Are you okay? Okay. I've got a few questions. I'll just ask one and then I'll let other people ask and then I'll come back again. One of my concerns, I've listened to all parties and I try to take a balanced view. But if you advertise your short-term let as a celebration house, what do you think the clientele will be expecting as an experience?
I do not advertise my house as a celebration house, and I'd be more than happy to pull up the exactly how I advertise the house. Would you be comfortable with that? Okay, and also the reference is here. It is neither advertised. It's not advertised as a celebration house. Clearly, celebrations will take place.
I was just wondering if because there are a number, I think, in the complaint of sort of screenshots. Has everybody got them, including the applicants, got copies of the screenshots? Because I think that the applicants would have to. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I think. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Braun.
If in a review, I guess, says this is a great house for a celebration, I don't think that's a problem, but that is not in itself advertising the house as a party house. Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you for your presentation. I hope your voice can hold out. I have a question, but just to clarify a point, this screenshot we've got here, does say at the bottom celebration house. It says celebration house on the screenshot. I'm assuming it's the front page. In features, it says celebration house. No, it's not the guest review, it's in the features. It's not my question, but it's just a clarification there. Why you brought the question. It's on the front page. At the bottom, it says features. Oh, sorry.
Cottages.com have a number of features, and I think that's probably on every single house that sleeps more than two. So it in and of itself, it is not advertised by us as that, but that's something that across the board, it's a categorization. You know, it will also say, you know, has barbecue, has swimming pool, has suitable for families, suitable for disabled, or so it is within their categorization.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. You've already sort of mentioned this. I just wondered if you could clarify it again so that I'm clear what the management arrangements are in place for the property when you're not available, like, for example, when you're on holiday or when you're both on holiday. Could you just clarify that for me again, please?
If we're both on holiday, the house is not let. If I'm on holiday, my husband's in attendance. If he's on holiday, well, I run the business closely, and in my summary, I'll cover a number more points. And because of the pool management, I would not give that responsibility to anyone else. And again, in my sum up, I can't remember if I said it earlier on, but I backwash the filter every second day. I am up at that house every second day. When guests are in, I'm at the house every second day. It gives me eyes on. I can see the guests. It allows me to check if they'd like additional towels. If I see anything that concerns me slightly, then I'll deal with it in a most respectable way.
Thank you. And just in response to the Celebration House comments and Cottage.com's categorisation of your house, just wondering if you know whether Cottage.com have a policy around about stag and hen nights or party houses similar to Airbnb.
Sorry, can I let my husband answer here?
Would you mind just repeating the question, please?
Airbnb have a policy where they don't advertise houses for party houses. And I was just wondering if Cottage.com, which is where you advertise your house, have a similar policy, or what is their policy around about parties within the houses that are advertised on their site?
The Cottages.com have no restriction as far as stag parties or hen parties are concerned. That's our decision. We don't want them. Yeah. So when they take a booking, they will ask that question. When we receive the booking, if we suspect it might be a stag or a hen party getting slipped under the radar, we'll question it. We'll contact the people because we have their details immediately upon booking. We're not interested in that kind of stuff.
I'll just add to that. I know the number of adults, the number of children, the number of infants. And it could be entirely possible that there are, 3 or 4 families. So there might be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cars. There could be 13 individuals with 13 cars. That's not in itself. That doesn't mean 13 times 5. So I think that's quite misleading when people assume that every car brings 5 people. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to get down and drill down. Do Cottage.com have a policy document which says we do not, or have a policy statement around about party houses? And from what you're saying, you don't accept them. But it sounds very much like Cottage.com do accept bookings for stag and hen parties. Is that what you're trying to say to me?
I would say that was accurate, but we have written in our information no stag or hen parties.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Thanks again. So I wanted to go back to the objectors, if you don't mind, and I'd just like to get a reaction to what do you think about the deputations from Mr. Craig and Mr. Smith?
Ken, I think that's probably a bit unfair, if you don't mind me saying.
Let me come back, okay? You've got 2 people here who came and gave emotional comments as to why they were objecting to your application. And I just wonder if there's any empathy whatsoever with what was said, because I didn't detect it when you were giving your deputation. Thank you.
Could I? I think the difficulty we have is the complete surprise with which we've been caught. 20 police call-outs in 33 months, but no police record. 5 police call-outs from Mr. Craig, but he can't give us one date. And again, no police records. Noise, shouting, swearing, antisocial behaviour, but no charges. It's just taken us completely by surprise for all these allegations that have been raised, and the first time we've known about them is on this document, and there's no record whatsoever to support it.
Mr. Hutchinson, I think probably that statement, we I possibly misinterpreted it as well, but listening to what Mr. Smith has had to say, I think what he's saying is there were 20 parties is my interpretation rather than 20. But yes, I know, I think that it was probably badly worded, but having listened to him earlier today, it sounds like it's been 20 parties over 33 months is what he's alleging. I understand what you say. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, we're answering his complaint, and it was all these police call-outs over that period of time. That's what we addressed.
If I could just say that until these objections were received by us in October, I had an excellent relationship with Monica. Jason, I rarely see, but on the occasions we see him, I bumped into both Jason and Monica and their son just literally at the beginning of October, and we chatted pleasantly. I would say we had an excellent neighbourly relationship, and I have documentation of all of the ways in which I've dealt with anything that Monica has brought up with me. And I think in my summary, you'll understand the points. I was deeply shocked at the time to receive the objections in their entirety and all of the allegations. And Mr. Smith from and also Jessica Leslie, we had an excellent relationship, and she's never once brought anything to me. And I think it was a real shock when we got the objection from her. I'm literally in the garden pretty much 2 or 3 times a week in summer, spring and autumn. And I'm visible at the property all the time, and I'm always chatting to the neighbours that come and that pass by.
Councillor Allen.
In your own deputation, you made mention of a number of interactions with Monica Craig. I'd like to understand, how often do you receive communications like those?
In the last 5 years, I've had 4 communications from Monica Craig. When I first introduced myself to Andrew Smith, I haven't been contacted once since then. And because of the way he was speaking with my guests, I believe the police asked him not to approach guests in that manner ever again. And Jessica Leslie, not once.
Okay, are there any further questions for Ms. Hutchinson? Councillor Braun, Councillor Stewart.
I have a couple actually, convener, but I'm happy to split them if you want to do that. First question comes back. I'm sorry, I'm having to come back to this question about the features on this website. I mean, presumably you control this yourselves. You control on the website. The feature website, I mean, it says barbecue, which you have. I mean, cots available, decorated Christmas, dishwasher, all these things. That I mean, I'm presuming Celebration House would have been put in by you, or if it's wrong, why haven't you taken it off? Sorry.
I believe it goes into every house that would be over a number that sleeps 4 or 6. But a celebration in and of itself is not necessarily a wild party. If a family are gathered together to have a celebration, that does not. It cannot be presupposed that celebration will be raucous. I've welcomed families from all over the world. I've welcomed 2 groups of families, one that donated, was it plasma or whatever, and saved another's life. I've had the absolute joy of meeting so many lovely groups of families and extended families and groups of friends, and I meet every single set of guests myself.
Thank you. Could I take Councillor Stewart first, and then I'll come back to you, Bob. Okay, Councillor Stewart.
You mentioned earlier about house rules. Do you have house rules about Bluetooth speakers in the pool and garden areas?
I asked them to keep the noise to a minimum after 10 p.m. and not to have any gatherings outdoors after 10 p.m. I don't have a rule per se about Bluetooth speakers, but that's something I'd be more than happy to consider. But I believe in asking people to respect the neighbours, that I do cover that.
Thanks, convener. I'm just going back to something else here. You mentioned in your deputation there's no electricity into the pool area. One of your guests says there's nothing quite like having a barbecue, setting up a massive projector screen, slipping on some board shorts and watching Jaws while floating around in your very own private pool. So the projector must have been in there for some power, surely. And is that not dangerous to have that, allow that happen?
Happy to explain. The guest did communicate with me in advance about exactly what they were going to do. He said, we're going to set up a projector with a large screen. And this was in the afternoon, I might underline, not in the evening. So the pool is 1/3. The pool is 1/3 under double glazing, and the other 2/3 are up in the middle of the house. And the pool can be viewed all round through glass. So there's the family room here, the master bedroom here, and the hallway. So they'd set up a projector screen in it was either the family room or the master bedroom. So that screen could be seen from outside. There was no electricity whatsoever brought in. Indeed, there's no plug point or socket.
Okay, are there any further questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nolan.
Sorry, this is the last question I've got for you, okay? I'm aware that businesses can run and 99% of the time they'll get fabulous reviews. Those aren't the ones you hear about. It's the not so good reviews that come back to bite you. I was just going to ask you about antisocial hours management. If one of your neighbours has got a problem at 1:30 in the morning, is it fair that they have to wait until the next day to get a resolution?
I'll switch my phone off at night. They wouldn't. I do not switch my phone off at night. And the one time that I was not contactable, I did make mention of earlier on. They had contacted my husband by email through the night, and I don't expect my husband to keep his phone on 24 hours. But even when if I'm not in the area, I would be able to deal with that if a guest contacted me. And that's the one occasion in the 4.5 years that I've known Jessica and Monica and Jason that I have not answered her immediately. So I did contact in the morning, and she said that she'd contact the guests. So no, I'm more than happy to be contacted at any time of the day.
Thank you. If there are no further questions to Ms Hutchinson, I don't see anything online. Could I therefore invite Mr Craig to sum up, followed by Mr Smith?
Thank you. I think the councillor actually unwittingly almost hit the nail on the head when he mentioned that there seems to be not a lot of empathy from these people that own the house. In essence, we are expected to be the first line of defence or acknowledgement when something goes wrong. You know, in essence, they're relying on us to tell them when something's going wrong, almost as if we are their employees for no pay. So I think that was actually, you know, an interesting point that actually kind of got to it. You know, basically, you know, coming back to what I said before, we just want to have the nice, quiet enjoyment of our nice house in a rural setting, not to be subjected to loud parties, basically. As we've said, you know, not every celebration is going to be a wild party. Of course it's not, but a large proportion of them are. And, you know, as we said, we are unfortunately the ones that have to hear it, that have to put up with it, and then wait for them to respond. Now, that threat 3 weeks ago, I still have no response from Colin when I messaged him. So they, seem to be burying their heads in sand a wee bit about that. But yeah, if this business could close or move on and not rely on us to be the ones that are bearing the brunt of it, because these guys have no problem. They just, make the profits off it and live happily ever after. It's us that have to suffer, not getting the nice, quiet life in our house that we were hoping for. So I think that's everything. So hopefully you understand our point of view and how it's not particularly enjoyable to live there, unfortunately. But fingers crossed, we can get some kind of resolution that lets everyone go forward nice and happily. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. To sum up, first let me clarify that 20 in 33 months, these were 20 occurrences of public nuisance in the 33 months. And on each of those occasions, I will have been in contact with, initially with one or other of the owners, and also with Monica and Jason. So those are 20 public nuisance events. I'm not claiming that I called the police on 20 separate occasions. Apologies if that is misinterpreted within my statement. Hopefully that clarifies it. So I think, finish where I started on the event 3 weeks ago. This is indicative of what can be expected to happen, and not just the possibility of undue public nuisance, the occurrence of it. 3 weeks ago at midnight, and again at 1:20 in the morning, there was more noise than you could sleep through. I contacted Jason. I know that they contacted the owners, so I did not seek to bombard the owners with anything. I just went through Jason, as their windows are only half the distance from the noise source as my windows. So it is this public nuisance which then becomes public order and public safety. I have not heard that the owners have contended as to whether there were threats made. From what I understand, they took the threats seriously. They then asked the hirers to to go to the Craig's doorstep the next day. So they do know about it. And I'm afraid a lot of what I've heard today is disingenuous. They have known for years the numerous complaints and have chosen to try to isolate and intimidate each and every one of us. I do not sit idly by when I'm intimidated. When I was smeared in November 2021, and I showed the police the next day, because they turned up at my door and said, we've had a complaint about you, Mr. Smith. And I showed the officer the video I took as I stood at the bottom of the steps, asking the people to acknowledge they're making too much noise and then to turn the music off, or to turn the music down. And I came away from there and was pleasant and polite and as businesslike as I am today. The police then advised me, please do not go to the doorstep, because you are putting yourself in danger of actual bodily harm, were their words. And so I listened to that advice, didn't go ever again. I say the smear because apparently the police were told that I had been videoing children in the pool. I refute that allegation. So how do the owners reconcile the events 3 weeks ago, the events of the last 3 years, and I contend the events of the last decade? There have been there can have been no surprise when these objections came in. And may I also clarify, as far as I understand, there is no reason why the objectors should take, and this committee should take, any notice whatsoever of any financial impact on the owner. If a nightclub owner came to you and said, oh, but I want to run a business here, I've been sort of running it on the sly for a while, can I just keep going? Because otherwise my business won't succeed. I don't think that is an issue which stands and holds any water whatsoever. So I would ask the committee to disregard the financial pleas of the owner. This is about the location, character, and a quiet residential area. I will summarise. This holiday park at the Old Quarry is a mile down the road from us. That came in front of Perth and Kinross planning recently and was approved. That is a suitable area where there is someone in charge. There are proper controls. There can be responsibility and accountability for everything that goes on there. And that application was approved because of that. I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Can I just make one comment? Yeah, before Heather summarises. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, sorry.
Could you please sum up, Ms. Hutchinson, and any comments that need to be made at this point?
Before Heather summarises, can I just comment on the point that Andrew made about he was alleged to have taken a video of children in the swimming pool? That was not what was said, and I would not like that to be put against him. He didn't video children in the swimming pool, and he shouldn't have been accused of that. What he did was he recorded the noise of children in the swimming pool. So there's nothing untoward, and there's not an untoward allegation made against Mr. Smith in that context. I think that should be cleared. Mm-hmm.
I would like to ask the committee to consider that my business had been running as a holiday let for 9 years prior to the 3 objectors moving into the area. I think it is most unfair for them to purchase their properties next to my business and therefore thereafter attempt to have it closed down. The 3 previous occupants of the 3 houses, we had an excellent relationship and did not receive one complaint from. Is it not significant that none of the other residents within the estate have raised objections despite living in the estate for far longer than the 3 objectors? Despite Mr. Smith alleging that there were 22 call-outs to the police, there isn't a single record of anything. There are not 22 records of this. Pardon?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. If the allegations from Mr. Smith and Mr. and Mrs. Craig are that of excessive noise and antisocial behaviour, why is there no record of Environmental Health Department regarding noise pollution, and why have no charges or warnings been brought, towards us? Also, one of the key objections raised by the objector is actually a planning matter, which states that no action was required and that therefore this doesn't have any relevance to the application. As mentioned previously, Monica Craig is the only neighbour who makes contact with me, and she is the wife of Jason. And if she has an issue, and in the last 5 years, since Monica and Jason, 4.5 years since Monica and Jason moved in, she's contacted me on 4 occasions. The one occasion that Jason made contact with my husband and Colin didn't have his number was the night that was alleged 3 weeks ago. Now I was alerted in the morning to an issue the night before, and I said, this is unacceptable, Monica, I will contact the guests immediately. I contacted the guests immediately. I said, could you please, and I screenshotted the complaint that I'd received from Monica and I sent it to the guest immediately. I said, this is unacceptable behaviour. Can you please explain exactly what happened? And he said, and then I got an answer about half an hour later. He said, I'm actually in Dollar buying Prosecco and champagne as an apology. He said it was my son and my wife that were at the back door. He said, I cannot imagine they were making that much noise. And if my son's comments were abusive, then I most unreservedly apologise. And I then communicated this to Monica. And then she said, and I said, they'd like to come and apologise. Would you be happy with that? And then I had received a message from Monica saying, we would prefer that your guests don't come to our door. But I don't know if that did or didn't happen after that. So my number is the number that Monica knows will be answered. And on one occasion in 4.5 years, I didn't get that till the morning. Despite Monica Craig and Jessica Leslie objecting to using the property as a holiday home, they have both made inquiries to me about using the property for their own guests, and it seems quite unfair to object to other people using the holiday home as a holiday let when they'd be perfectly happy using it for their own family. Jessica asked, would it be possible? And I said, absolutely. And I sent her a video of the house and I said, you're very welcome to come and see the house at a point that suits you. But I think the time that she wanted was over Christmas and New Year, which is always taken fairly quickly. Again, I have in text communication, and Monica and Jason were to be married not long after they moved in, and she said we'd be really interested in renting the house for our guests, and I said we'd be delighted to let you have the house for your guests. And as previously stated, we will continue to answer any communication whatsoever from any of our neighbours if they have concerns over activity at the property. We have a security camera linking directly to my phone at the front door, and we've had this for some time now, and we've taken the additional measure of adding another at the back door in order to have clear visibility of both entrances and to monitor noise. So that if I receive a call, I can, if somebody's at the back door, it literally clicks on, and my guests are aware that it's monitored by camera. And if I see it clicking on, I will click that straight away, and I see a video of what's going on at the back door. So I'm doing this in an effort to ensure that there is no noise or nuisance to my neighbours. And if I'm concerned about any level of noise, I will drive straight up there. And on occasions, as I've previously pointed out that Monica has been in touch, I've taken immediate action on the occasions. So regarding my guests, these people are highly respectable people. They eat and golf at Gleneagles, the Market Inn, the Grouse and Claret, have lunch at the Milk Bar, visit Pitlochry and House of Brewer, eat at the Larder, cycle round the loch, visit the many beautiful locations which adorn Perth and Kinross, yet they are all presented by the objectors as misbehaving, loud and out of control, despite there being no record of continuous submissions. Additionally, there's a small shop in Powmill, and until fairly recently, the owner and his wife and children lived above the shop. He told us, tell your guests if they ever need anything out of ours, just ring the bell and I'd be delighted to open up the shop and serve them. And every business prior to this gentleman taking over had failed, and the shop would literally open and close, and he's been there for many, many years now. And why does he do this? Because he needs and appreciates the business, and it's testimony to my guests that they have never abused this or caused any problems whatsoever. These are very respectable people who pay good money for the property and don't deserve to be misrepresented, and they all don't deserve to be misrepresented as they are in these complaints. There's just one additional thing. So just to reiterate again, all neighbours have my contact details, and because we share a Clargester sewage system, we also meet annually to weed around it and paint the fence and have a street barbecue afterwards. As I personally manage the property and do 90% of the gardening, I often see and chat with neighbours as they pass by, as I have done with Monica and Jason and Jessica. I also do 50% of the cleaning, with one cleaner working with me. I take a security deposit from all of my guests, and in 13 years have only kept a small part of a security deposit on one occasion. I also ask in advance of their visit what the purpose of the visit is, so that I can A, tailor their welcome supplies accordingly, and B, again underline that I wish to respect my neighbours and keep noise levels down to a minimum beyond 10 p.m, with no outdoor gatherings allowed after 10 p.m. There is no sound system wired throughout the house, and certainly no disco ball in the house or pool. There cannot be any electrical point, and there is no and cannot be any electrical point in the swimming pool. This is not only our business, but our livelihood. And regarding strangers and coming into the community and security issues, I have the mobile phone numbers of my guests and can contact them at any point. And parcel and vans delivering food and parcels to the local houses amount numerically to more than the occasional food delivery that my guests receive. Regarding privacy, as I mentioned earlier, we have a 6-foot fence and hedgerows bordering the Craig house, but recently the Craigs removed their hedgerows, giving them full visibility into our swimming pool, allowing them to video or photograph our guests. I know I come across as possibly aggressive, but it's actually nerves. I'm shaking here because I'm really shocked at what has now become a breakdown in neighbourly relations. And as can be confirmed in text that I have from Monica, I would have counted her a friend up until now, up until October.
May I just say something just to close? Although we are opponents in this case today with Jason and Monica and Andrew and his wife, sorry, I don't know his wife's name, the couple across the road, I really do think they're decent people. And it's regrettable that our relationships have broken down. I thought about contacting them, but then when I read some of the allegations that were made, I felt it would be prudent just to wait until this hearing today. If we're awarded our licence, and I sincerely hope we are, I really would like to meet with the neighbours concerned, or any other neighbours for that matter, and say, look, what can we do here? Are there any, and maybe take advice too, on what can we do? Because everyone deserves to live in a happy, safe, enjoyable neighbourhood. And if Andrew or Jason, or excuse me, I can't remember the name of the couple across the road, was willing to meet with us and discuss it, we'd be very happy to do that. We really want to improve this. And one of the measures we did take, as Heather mentioned, is to put these cameras at the front and back door, so that before noise was, before Jason or Monica would alert us to noise, if there was noise, we would hear it from our own monitor. That's now in place. So we're hoping that that will help any conversation that maybe gets a bit too loud outside the hours. But I'll just close with saying I really would like to repair these relationships and really have a good relationship with our neighbourhood. They deserve that, and I think we manage the property extremely well, and we'd like to prove that to them. Thank you.
Ms. Can I recommend that we adjourn for further discussion? Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. My motion is to grant the license for 3 years with the following conditions. There'll be no social gatherings or amplified music played in the garden after 10 p.m. The license holder must take reasonable steps to manage the premises in such a way as to seek and prevent and deal effectively with any antisocial behaviour by guests to anyone else in the short-term let and in the locality of the short-term let. The license holder must take reasonable steps to ensure that no disturbance or nuisance arises within or from the premises, for example, by explaining the house rules to guests. B, take reasonable steps to deal effectively with any disturbance or nuisance arising within or from the premises as soon as practical after the license holder is made aware of it. The license holder must ensure that they shall or should have due respect for neighbours at all times. The license holder there will be no there will be no hen or stag parties on the premises. And finally, the pool must be closed and vacated by guests by 9 p.m. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, I've mentioned about there are no social gatherings or amplified music played in the garden after 10 p.m. Okay, I'm sorry if I missed that out. Okay, do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Are there any amendments to the motion? There are no amendments to the motion. We will grant the license under those conditions that I've just outlined, along with the conditions that are outlined within the report. Could I also recommend that you speak to cottages.com and have the celebratory house removed allocation and see if that can be done. I know it might be difficult, but if that could be done, that would be ideal. I hope that both parties can come together after this and find a way of working together genuinely. Life's too short, okay? And if you can take up the offer of meeting with each other and having a cup of tea, that's probably the best way to sort it out. All right. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. Okay, Prosecco. All the conditions will be confirmed in writing to you, okay? Okay, could I request the attendees in relation to the Tabernacle Dol Aberfeldy are brought to the table? Okay, members, this is for the application of a short-term license. Remember, this application is on page 85 onwards in your document pack. For this item of business, we are joined in the chamber by the applicant's agent, Joanna Miller, the applicants, Nair and Nicola Bakshi, are joining by telephone. We are also joined in the chamber by the objectors to the application, Dr. Richard Kaplan and Anna Brocklehurst. Two further objections were received from David Riley and Dillon Ween Community Council, who are not present today. I will now hand over to Mona McLaren, who will introduce the report and advise on the procedures for the hearing.
I just wanted to check, are we still waiting for the applicants? Or, I just wonder if we should wait for the applicants to, are the applicants intending to attend the meeting? Yeah. They're not going to be in the call then, right? Okay then.
Yeah.
Right, so they're just watching. Yeah. Right, are you happy for me to proceed? Right, okay. Right, just to clarify, this is obviously an application for a 3-year short-term let. This is and the applicants are an existing host and they've been operating, prior to October 2002. We've not got any objections from police or from the fire service. The procedure, what will happen is that in these sort of cases, that the projector it would start first. So it could be Dr. Kaplan, you could start first, for example, and then you give a presentation and advise what your objections are. The committee will then ask you questions, and then Ms. Brocklehurst, the same procedure will happen again. And then the applicant's agent will be given an opportunity to respond with regard to the application and to the objections, and then ask questions, and then everybody will be individually being entitled to actually sum up their positions, and the committee will then make a decision regarding whether to refuse or grant the license.
Okay. To be able to advise the objectors, the licensing committee members have received and thoroughly reviewed a copy of all objections prior to this meeting. It is requested that you keep any explanation of your objection to no more than 10 minutes. Additional grounds for objection or representation should not be added at this time. Only the grounds of the objection and representations included in your initial submissions may be referenced. Could I invite Dr. Kaplan to provide details of his objection, please?
Once. Okay, good afternoon. I am aware that I've given you a pretty detailed objection already in writing, and so I'm not going to go over that again. It would be pointless for me to do that, but I would ask you to read it very carefully because it does contain the information that I'm concerned about. But the areas that I'd like to concentrate on, and just to amplify if that's okay, there are three. One is the scale of the development, one is the management of the development, and the other is the transparency of the development. So, and I'll try and be as brief as possible. So the scale of the development is, we're in a very small village, and it's not a sort of round village, it's a long strung out village. So we're at the very end of it, and it's very quiet and has been like that for millennium. And the development that's taken place above my ground, above my garden, there was nothing on it at all beforehand except for an old church. It's a very beautiful building. It was, the history of it is that it was, I think it was the Catholic Church in Aberfeldy, and it was demolished to make way for a new building. And the person who owned the property that I'm in before I moved in there in 2008, I think, she saw it being taken apart, and she had it dismantled piece by piece and numbered. Every bit of it was numbered, and it was taken up and built on what was agricultural ground above my garden. And it really is a lovely building. But it had no planning permission, and it was on agricultural ground. And for well over a decade, the person tried to have it converted for residential use. First because it had no permission at all. So it was first to get, I think, agricultural use. And then once that was achieved, after a long time, it was granted permission on a residential basis. And the way that happened was the council Perth and Kinross Council were very against that building being where it was because it was completely inappropriate. And it had no agricultural function. And so the council were very, very vehement in not allowing it to have any permission at all for a very long period. And then I don't know what it's called, but I think you get every X number of years, there's something takes place which defines the outline of a village and where building might be allowed to take place. And for some reason that no one's really clear, it was understood that that building had a residential basis. And so they drew the boundary around it when they redrew the boundaries. And I know from my discussions with the council at the time that they found this a bit of an aberration, but there was nothing that could be done about it. And over a period of time, it was clear that it was changed to residential use. And it went through a process. Now, the reason I'm telling you that bit of history is that it sort of signifies everything that has happened with that building up until now is part of the same sort of approach, which is nothing has been done with proper planning permission at all in relation to this building. And it's all, well, I did mention it in my objection, and it will become clear when it comes to transparency. So I won't dwell on this, but I just want you to be aware that there's a history to this, and that every single thing that's happened in that building has been done retrospectively. And so maybe I'll just jump from there to transparency then, because that's what I said I wanted to discuss. So if we look at what's happening at the moment, this is a business. I appreciate that it's being pursued under the short-term let process, but what happened was I have been trying for quite some time to at least limit what was happening up there. I appreciate that it might be hard to stop everything happening up there, but at least limit the development of what was happening up there. And my advice from the council was to wait for the short-term let process, because they didn't understand how this was all going to come about and what the process might ultimately be, but they knew that there would be a process. And my advice from the council was that I should wait until the short-term process became clear and then object to what was happening in that part of that process. So this is a business. And short-term let, I think there's a confusing area, and I understand your difficulties in this too, because I know that the short-term let position is very complicated and hard to define. But in no way is this not a business. It was developed as a business. They call it a business. It's presented as a business, it's advertised as a business, it's run as a business, it's a business. And businesses need different types of planning approaches to what's taking place here. And so, yes. Turn it off, yes.
I just want to remind you that we are not dealing with any planning processes at this meeting. That's not within our remit to deal with planning or title deeds of any matter. Okay, that's out with the remit of this committee. So if you can try and stray away from those two aspects of your objection, that would.
I fully understand that, but I hope you understand that, you know, it's not as if the process that you have is entirely clear either. But I will do that. But it is a contextual matter, and I'll move on to I'll leave that then. You've heard what I've said about that, and I'll leave that. So the other issue I wanted to talk, and this is probably the most important aspect of it, is the management of this business. It's completely unmanaged in the real sense. And it was interesting listening to the previous discussion of the previous case. And I could see that in that one, there was a significant management taking place. The person was resident in the area, had lived in the area, knew all the people, and was available to deal with things. That is not the case here. This is managed from Spain. And it's all managed over the phone. And it's key box entries to 2 properties. And people arrive, there's nobody there to meet them. I'm sure they do communicate with the owners. I'm certain that takes place, but it's, you know, at a distance. And we have been advised that if we've got any concerns about, and this is a different scale to the previous case. So we're not having 13, 14 people in the building, but there's still, you know, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough to be noticeable that there are people stay in the hot tub. They've both got hot tubs in front of each of the premises, and there are people in them right through until midnight very often, and this goes on right through the winter. I didn't imagine that would be the case. You'd think people would be frozen, but in fact they like it more in the winter. And we're in an area where there is no sound at all. It was interesting you said no noise after 10 p.m. Well, we have no noise even during the day. Where I live, it's quiet in a way that you probably can't imagine. And that's how it's been for a millennium. And you can hear absolutely everything that anyone says. I can hear conversations very clearly all the time taking place. And we're expected to telephone the owners in Spain to explain, and this is a daily occurrence. I mean, it's not, I'll be on the phone every day. We're expected to phone, their expectation is that we should phone them to tell them, and they would then presumably, I don't know, phone these people and say, stop talking. Now, the people themselves are very nice, because I walk my dogs up past them and they're very nice. And I heard you earlier saying, well, have you called the police? No one would call the police in this situation. This is not a police matter. But it is definitely ever present and noisy in a way that you might not understand. So it has completely changed the character and the amenity of the area that we're in, and it's permanent. It's a beautiful building. It's very expensive and it's always rented out. It's constant. And people stay for a short time. So there's changeovers all the time. And they're all very excited when they arrive. Why wouldn't they be? They're in a lovely place and they've got a nice hot tub and a beautiful view, and out they go and they have a really nice time. And I don't want them not to have a nice time, but I don't want to hear them all the time. It's a very complicated situation. So my main concern is how on earth can this be managed from Spain? It can't. They have no one else coming in. It's not as if they've got a management company or people who can do this for them. It doesn't happen. And now they will say that they do. They've got cleaners. That's it. They do not have, it's not properly managed. And it's caused a really, really difficult situation, which we would like to resolve. And I think, you know, for me, it's hard to escape the planning aspect of it because it is a business. and it should be done properly. And these things, I think the transparency on this building has been really unusual all the way through. It shouldn't really exist at all, but it does. And so I just want you to understand it in context, and I think that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for Dr. Kaplan? Ron?
There we go. Thank you for your presentation. Just going back to one thing you said and talking about management. If the appropriate management was in place, would you be happy with the short-term let being in that location? But
It would make a huge difference. I'm not against short-term lets in principle. That's not what it's about. But it has to be done sensitively and appropriately and be managed appropriately.
Members, are there any further questions for Dr. Kaplan? If there are no further questions for Dr. Kaplan, could I now move to invite Ms. Brocklehurst to provide details of her objection?
Hi everyone. Our objection, so I'm here for myself and my husband. We live, we're one of the neighbouring properties. Our objections really are three. I've put them kind of in a fairly straightforward note, so I'll just cover three main areas. The first, very similar to Ricky, is management. There's no management at the moment. It's not working managing the property from Spain. There is a cleaner and a gardener. Nobody meets people, checks them in. There are issues with noise, maintenance issues, music. We've had people on our land, all that kind of thing. Yes, we can phone or message the owners in Spain, but it's really not what I want to be doing on a regular basis. So the fact that there's no management on site or locally is a huge issue to me and to us. The second area is around access. The properties, there are two properties, and they are accessed in the same way, theoretically, as my house, which is via a privately owned track. That track is owned by Nicky and Nia, who own the Tabernacle and the other property. That track is in a really bad state of repair and doesn't have a maintenance programme with it. The majority of the traffic is traffic for the short-term let properties. We also have in our deeds a liability to make a contribution to the upkeep of the track, as does Mr. Riley, who's one of the other objectors. I think he has something similar. Obviously, I can't speak for him. We've tried in the past to all contribute and to sort of get that track fixed, but it hasn't worked. And now the track is a complete mess. Again, people drive up it at all sorts of times of day and night, and most of them can't drive in the countryside. So, you know, they're kind of people coming for a nice break in the country in their little car, or maybe in their Range Rover, actually, probably, and can't get up the drive and completely dig it up, cause all sorts of problems. A lot of people come down too fast. I've got small children. There are animals running around. So I would like to see something done to improve the track and maintain the track by the people who own it and run the businesses as well. And some sort of signage, really, because of the volume of traffic. So it's not just the people going up and down to stay in the houses. As Ricky said, usually it's 2 or 3 night stays. Sometimes there are 2 cars there, extra cars. Sometimes there are 2 cars for one property. Then there's cleaners. Then there's people who come to do the sheets. Then there's gardeners. There are Tesco delivery vans. So it's just a huge amount of wear and tear on the access road, which has caused a real problem and is unsafe. And then the third area, really, for me, is around the sort of use of the space from here on in. So when we moved next to, the owners lived in the main house, and we moved thinking we were moving next to a family in a small rural village. We now live next to a business in a small rural village. That's fine. These things happen. That's life, right? You can't stop that sort of progress. However, my concern is that because of the back doorway that a lot of the permissions were granted, so we didn't object to the planning. I know this isn't a planning thing, but we didn't object to the planning permission for one of the short-term lets because the owners were on site and it was going to be rented out on an informal Airbnb basis, and they would be on site to manage it. So we didn't object to that. However, what then emerged is, in fact, they would be renting out both of the properties and there would be no on-site manager. So if we'd known that, we would have, of course, objected because we didn't want to have an Airbnb above us with no management of it. So my concern is, given the kind of small village, the rural situation, that it's totally inappropriate really to expand again. And I remained worried about that. There's loads of local pressure on housing, on roads, and this business sort of just seems to grow up in bits by the back door, and I have a significant concern that could continue to grow. There's space for more properties if anybody wanted to put them in, and that would worry me deeply as well.
Thank you, Anna. Do members have any questions? Councillor Braun?
Thanks. Thanks for your deputation again. If I may ask you the same question, if the appropriate management was in place, would you be happy with that? And another question, if I may, which I should have asked Mr. Kaplan as well, is if there's problems there, what do you have to do? Who do you ring? Who do you get to come and sort the problems out?
Get used to this microphone thing. So would I be happy if there was proper management in place? Yeah, that's one of the conditions I would like to see put in place. But yes, I would be much happier if there were. Currently, if there are problems, I message Nikki, usually one of the owners, and to be fair, she does generally respond quite quickly. There will then be a period of time while she then speaks to the people who are in the house, and they'll turn the music down. They'll deal with that. But I don't message her on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis even, because it's not the kind of thing, and I think we are a bit different from the people earlier in that the relationships are not totally broken down, and I don't want to hassle Nikki and be like, can you tell these people to turn off their music at 10 o'clock at night? Which, to be fair, they have put in place guidance that says people shouldn't play music at night. When I'm sitting outside in the summer with my family, I will sometimes message and say, could you ask people to put their music off? Nobody else plays music in our area at all, ever. I mean, I have 2 teenage children and I don't let them play any music outside. That's fine. They do generally do it. If I message, people will usually do it, and Nikki is responsive and they will do it. But it's not a way to sort of deal with that kind of issue, I don't think. And then there's lots of other issues when I don't get in touch with them, because I just feel like, what's the point in phoning or messaging Spain to say people who are staying at your house are wandering around in our garden, they don't seem to realise what it is, they can't find it, they've come into our house. I just try and be helpful and sort things out. They can't find X, they can't find Y, just trying to help them and sort them out. But it's not ideal to have to, to know that there's nobody nearby who can hop over and look at an issue. So if there's an issue with the common land that we all have, or water that we all have, access to, all those kinds of things, there has to be long negotiations done over WhatsApps, over emails, where people have to send photos and send videos and explain what the issues are. So it's just not ideal.
I think you asked me that. None of us really want to be a proxy manager. It doesn't seem appropriate, because it would be something we'd have to do quite a lot of, and it doesn't seem right. And I think that I'm listening to the conditions you applied before. I could understand the conditions that you did, but it's how you actually enforce isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. How do you actually make sure that they take place? Now that requires someone who knows what they're doing. It doesn't, if you have a good management process, that can be achieved. So that's what I think it needs.
Anna, could I ask about you said, you mentioned there about a private water supply. Is that a shared private water supply between everybody in Dull, including the holiday let? No?
I'm getting better than you at the mics. No, sorry, it's not a water supply. We all live at the bottom of a hill, so there's lots of water that comes down. So generally, it's not a water supply issue, but generally every year there will be a problem with water of some kind coming down from somewhere where we all have to go and reroute things or do things. And those problems do get resolved, but they're quite difficult. They're quite difficult to get resolved, and it takes a long time when you're dealing with people from other bits. You know, when all the floods were there, the amount of water, all three houses are at the bottom of a hill in Dull. So the amount of water last year coming down the hill, and obviously Ricky, and I was about to say Ricky and my husband are out more than me, kind of sorting things out, you know, Ricky messages Nia or Richard does to say, this is what's happening. And they all do come up with a plan, but it's not easy doing that via Spain. Rather than if people are here. And also you can see that things are kind of coming, can't you, when somebody's here as well and kind of plan for them.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, sir? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mrs. Brocklehurst. It's just to clarify that situation that you mentioned about the private road. I wasn't quite sure whether I understood what you said. Are you saying that the private road is actually owned by the owners of the Tabernacle, but the other residents have got a joint responsibility for the repair and upkeep? Is that how it works? Thank you.
Yeah, the private road is owned by the owners of the short-term lets. The other properties have a right of access over the private road, and we have a responsibility to contribute to the upkeep of the private road, which we have never said we wouldn't contribute to, but it isn't done properly. There isn't an agreement in place for it. It hasn't been maintained properly because there's nobody on site to maintain it. So, for example, when we had all the bad weather last year, there were big trees all the way across it at one point. There's water flooding down some of the culverts, making big dips. That means that we can't get out of our house and get down the track, but also their guests can't get out and get down the track. So obviously we did go out and move some of the trees that are sticks, stuff that's blowing around, but actually it isn't our responsibility. It's their land. It's a private road that they own, and we're happy to be a part of that, but as owners of that, we feel that they need to take a responsibility for maintaining that and for fixing it properly.
Thank you. And you talked about sending photographs backwards and forwards. Have you made them aware of the fact about the deterioration in the road surface?
I mean, not in the past few weeks, but they were back a few months ago and would have seen it. And again, I can do that, but why is it my responsibility to manage their road? So at the moment, we actually park our cars, generally, at least one of our cars, at the bottom of the road because it's in such a bad condition that I don't want to take my slightly fancier car up the road, and I don't want to take the old one up.
Is it possible just to take some legal guidance on the road? That would be a civil matter. Is that correct? Is that something for us to consider or not?
It isn't something that we'd normally, be considering in the context of this kind of hearing. But it doesn't seem that there's arguments about who is paying what. Is there actually their road? And it would almost be like a civil matter. It is part of the business, yeah. Yeah. Well, you'd have to ask that question.
Okay. Sorry. If there are no further questions for Anna, could I please invite Ms. Miller to provide details of their client's application response to the objections? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll also give you some background on the application and the operators, Your Honours. In relation to the application is lodged by Highland Spaces Limited, and the operators of that are Nikki and Near Bakshi. There is criticism in the letters of objection, one, that this is a business, and two, that the operators live abroad. This is a business, Your Honours. Every application which comes before you for a short-term let is a business. So yes, it's a business, that's a matter of fact. There's questions about transparency, Your Honours, and in relation to the fact this is a business, this is a limited company. I lecture in business law at Strathclyde University, Your Honours, and one of the first things we always do is ask the students to identify the different types of business: sole trader, partnership, LLP and limited company. And one of the downsides, or one of the perceived downsides of a limited company by the students, is the fact that there is transparency. So everybody knows your business, which they don't with an old-fashioned partnership or a sole trader, because all you have to do is submit accounts to HMRC. Whereas with a limited company, your accounts are on Companies House, your information is on Companies House, and when you make changes to that business, that is also on Companies House. And annually, you're required to submit information to Companies House to keep that information up to date. So in my submission, Your Honours, a limited company sits perfectly well with the business, and in fact, just further transparency, not a lack of transparency, in relation to the operation of the business. The property began life as a church, that's correct. It was going to be put to landfill and was saved by Nikki's mother. It was constructed on site and was lived in by them for a period of time. Their view of the property is that it's not necessarily an ideal family home, simply because the main bedroom is on a mezzanine. Noise travels around the property very easily, and the second bedroom, which was their children's bedroom, is quite small, so storage is required in the rest of the house for the children. From the point of view of the operation of the property, Your Honours, it is therefore I'm instructed to confirm to you that the points that have been made about affordable housing, I'm not sure this property falls into that bracket, Your Honours, but setting that aside, it would not be marketed. It was, as I said, saved and built by the current owner's mother, and the family have a strong emotional connection to the property. So were it not to be granted a licence, it would not be marketed and it would not be long-term let. The family would stay in it themselves on return. There are 3 sisters in the family, plus the husband of the owner has siblings himself and family himself. So certainly it would be used as a home for people to come together and a home for people to visit. It wouldn't be sold and it wouldn't be long-term let. The operators are in Spain, Your Honours, and something has been made of this by the objectors. So I would like to give you a little bit of background. There's perhaps a stereotype springs to mind, Your Honours, in relation to people leaving the country. And one thing I would say is that it wasn't a decision taken lightly. The operators are in Spain. There are 2 reasons for that. The first is that Near had a very serious accident in 2015. He had a serious brain injury and had to give up work. His son was on the same quad bike as his dad during the accident, and his son was affected by that, but his son also has various support needs, and as a result of that, the family tried to identify those support needs in the UK, which were not available. So on the basis that their son has neurodiversity and emotional health difficulties, the couple found a school in Barcelona which could support their son. That was one of the main reasons for their move to Spain. And that move wasn't done lightly, Your Honours. It was done shortly before COVID, without the knowledge that COVID was coming. And they did so for a trial period of 3 months to see if they could run the business with support from others and if that would work. So it wasn't something taken lightly, and it wasn't something which was done on a whim. It was a very, very serious upheaval for the whole family, and it was something which they were very careful about. We've heard that there's no management, Your Honours, and that's quite simply not the case. In relation to people who are located here in the UK and indeed very close to the property, there is a John Campbell who assists in the operation and management of the property. He runs the boats of Cluny, a comparative business located in Strathstay. He has worked in the hospitality industry for over 2 decades. And prior to running Boats of Cluny, he owned and ran a hotel in Edinburgh. He will go to the property whenever needed. He's a very practical person, I'm told, so able to manage a lot of issues. And he has gone to do things like deliver emergency cots when guests have forgotten their own. He will go there if there is issues with lost keys. And he's also gone to show someone how to use the induction hob, despite the fact there is a video online and detail in the guest book, which I'll get to. There is then Karen Banyard, who is a quality control team member and helps maintain highest industry standards. The operators have had consistent 5-star reviews and want to maintain that. But to do that, they require to have somebody looking at the property and establishing whether the property is offering a 5-star service. Karen has worked in and around Highland Perthshire for more than 2 decades, managing properties like this one. She is on board. She's not named as a day-to-day manager, but she is certainly on board as a managing agent for the property. And she is, what I'm told, one of the most respected co-hosts in the local area. Felicity and Fraser reside in the village of Dull, and they are crucial because they're able to get to the property on foot. So if there's snow, flooding, wind, adverse weather, they can walk to the property. They have managed situations arising such as weather-related issue, boiler faults due to power cuts, or resetting electrical timers. They provide invaluable support, and certainly during adverse weather when others may not be able to. Will is the handyman who has decades of experience, and my clients tell me he's able to fix anything. He visits the property once a month unless he is needed earlier than that. So again, in relation to the fact there's no maintenance and no management, we're told. Well, there is, Your Honours. There is a handyman visiting the property once a month. There is also a gardener visiting the property every 2 weeks from April to November, and out with that time every 4 to 6 weeks. The gardener is Donald. He maintains the Taymouth estate and golf course and has done for almost 2 decades. So he's a very experienced gardener, and the operators are very happy with the manner in which he keeps their garden and land. There is a dedicated cleaner called Sharon who exclusively works for the property. She, prior to joining that team, she worked in a large estate managing and cleaning for 14 years. And there is a laundry company that provides laundry for the property called CM Cleaners, and they provide a backup. If Sharon is unwell or is on holiday, there is a backup of a pool of over 100 cleaners. So in relation to that, Your Honours, there is management and control, and there is people certainly located in this country, very, very close, both walking distance and driving distance to the premises. In relation to the some of the criticisms levied in the letters of objection, Your Honours, when the couple moved to Spain, they trialled a number of different ways of managing. Now, as they moved to Spain, the pandemic hit, so everything closed. As we returned to business after the pandemic, there were a lot of restrictions in place, and in fact, people were encouraged not to do face-to-face check-ins and not to be face-to-face with people, but to bubble and to distance. And that, to some extent, gave the Zoom, Teams and that kind of thing advanced. Things like the online guidebook advanced, and there was certainly more support for the couple than they'd had when they first moved. So they found those things useful and helpful. In relation to check-in, they have since COVID found that people prefer a check-in which is not a face-to-face check-in. Now, I appreciate in the last matter we had a face-to-face check-in that was a very large property. This property is seeking 5 persons. You've heard from the objectors there are 2 properties on site. One of those properties is not relevant to this application. It's covered by another licence. So all we're considering here is Tabernacle, and that's for 5. And the reason that's for 5 is there is a main bedroom, which is a king bed, and that's the mezzanine bedroom I discussed, and that sleeps 2. There is then a very, very small room with 2 full-size singles, which would also sleep 2. It's not a property which would attract two couples in general, Your Honours, because the small room is very much a small two single rooms. So it's not that kind of property. It usually attracts either one couple or perhaps a family with young children. And the only reason for seeking 5 is if somebody has a baby. So they're not seeking 5 so somebody can sleep on a blow-up mattress or sleep on the couch. They're seeking 5 only on the basis that somebody can bring along a baby, and because of the uncertainty of the maximum occupancy, of what age of children would apply, because all of this was still going on through application process, they sought 5 people to allow for a baby. They have no issue if Your Honours wish to put a condition on the licence that it's 4 persons plus infants, as that is all that is ever taken on. I do have some information here, if I can just pass that to yourselves. I have a guidebook, Your Honours, which I've emailed and I think your online member has seen. If I could maybe pass up some copies of this. I'm not sure if there's one for everyone. It is about 100 pages long, so I thought perhaps not destroy too many forests. And there is also a paper plastic envelope which has a layout plan of the property and some photos of the exterior, simply so that Your Honours can see the uniqueness of the property. I'm not expecting Your Honours to read 100 pages of guidebook. I'll highlight some matters in it to you. It's really just to show you the management and control which is in place. The guidebook is an online guidebook. While there are requirements for certain things to physically be within premises, the guidebook is something which is becoming more common, I find, in dealing with clients. It's an excellent opportunity for operators to provide management by putting things in a position where somebody can access it on their phone or on their tablet. These clients do contact people prior to them coming to the property, so there is management and control. There's emails, there's messages sent, and there is telephone discussion. One of the complaints I hear, and not just from these clients, in fairness, Your Honours, is that people don't read things. So they could send them a big long email with the house rules, and actually people don't read it. They will constantly be asked questions which they've already answered in the documentation they've sent out or the links they've sent out. So the steps they've taken is they still go through what we call the client journey. They still get in touch when people make their booking and before people come, and they still give people the relevant information. But what they do is they also use this, which I've printed so you can see it, but it actually comes either online or on your phone as an app, and you can search through it for anything. So if you get to the property and don't know how to turn the fridge on, you search fridge and it will come up with the relevant section. If you want to go out for dinner, you search food or restaurants and it will come up with the relevant section. And one of the things my clients have indicated they really like about this is the ability to support local businesses as well. They also have a YouTube channel, which is not for them to post Instagram type videos, Your Honours, but is for them to post videos on how to work things. So as I said earlier, they were very surprised to have somebody who couldn't work the induction hob, because in actual fact, every appliance and most of the other electrical goods in the premises have a video on their YouTube channel, and there's links sent out to guests prior to attendance, and the link is also in this, so guests can go onto the YouTube channel and watch a video of how to work the induction hob, which might be important if you don't have an induction hob. They have an automated booking system, Your Honours, and they have a very coherent and detailed client contract. So there is a contract which is presented to all of their clients who are coming to the property. I haven't produced it, Your Honours, it's slightly commercially sensitive, so we tend not to produce these things. But this is the renter agreement. As you can see, it runs to 3 double-sided pages of reasonably small print, and that goes out to every person who is coming to the property. And that again outlines a number of matters, including house rules. And one of the specific house rules, Your Honours, is that there is no music to be played outside. So not just after 10 o'clock at night, but no music to be played outside. The objector has indicated that there are issues with noise and music. There has been one complaint received from the objectors over the period in relation to music, and that was in relation to people staying in the other property, not the Tabernacle. As a result of that, the action which the operators took was to advise guests that they should not have music on outside. I appreciate that the objectors are saying they haven't called, but the difficulty is, Your Honours, we're now between a rock and a hard place, because we have objectors saying, oh no, we don't want to call because we want to bother them, but we're going to object to the licence. So we're left in a position where the objectors are not giving the operators the opportunity to rectify matters. And the operators actually have CCTV at the premises, which CCTV has audio. So the operators can hear if guests have, for example, are playing music or have been asked not to play music and are continuing to do so. It would be helpful if, instead of getting to the position where we're at a formal hearing with objections, that we were able to have communication between neighbours and the operators when there is an issue, so that issue can be identified. Because at the moment, the objections have come in, and that's the first time that a number of these matters have actually been raised. Although the music issue was raised once, it hasn't been raised since. So there are steps that can be taken, and the operators are happy to take those steps, but they can't take those steps if they don't know things are a continuing issue. So in all honesty, Your Honours, while the objectors are critical of communication with the operators, the objectors really must communicate. And although they may feel that they're bothering them, they're not. Because as we've said, this is a business. They take their business very seriously, and they want to know if there's problems so that they are able to then address that with the guests. They're not asking anyone to proxy manage. One of the objectors said they're being expected to proxy manage. No, they are not. But they're not conveying when there's issues. So the operators are not being told on Saturday night at 10:30 there was music being played, or they would have resolved that. I may have misunderstood the objector as well, Your Honours, but Mr Kaplan had said that the village is very quiet, that people arrive in the afternoon and they're very excited and they're very noisy. I don't think we can really monitor noise during the day, Your Honours, in relation to the noise, unless it is inappropriate noise. I think noise during the day is the same as boys in their back garden playing football, which I'm sure does happen in the village. So I think we have to be mindful, Your Honours, about what the actual issue here is. If it's noise late at night, that's entirely acceptable to have an issue with that. If it's simply the village is quite quiet and there's some noise going on in the afternoon or during the day, I think that of itself has to be accepted. The contact, Your Honours, is by WhatsApp. There was some mention in the objections about being expected to telephone Spain. People are not expected to telephone Spain. They can WhatsApp the operators and they will get an almost immediate response. And there may then be a delay while the operators go off and speak to the guests, but they will do that. If there is something that requires someone with feet on the ground, that will then be organised through the reasonably expansive team which we have here, Your Honours. Somebody will go up and will physically be there. There's a lot of criticism in these objections, Your Honours, about people not being physically there. There are 4 types of licence application come before you: secondary letting, home sharing, and a combination of home sharing and home letting. The only one where people actually live in their property is home sharing. So for home letting, the whole point is that is someone's house and they are not there. And my experience of that, Your Honours, is that the person is not there because they are away for a period of time. So they're away for work, or they're going on a Lovely World tour, or they have a sabbatical. And that means they are usually some distance from the property. So the vast majority of applications which are coming before you for home letting will not have someone on site, and for secondary letting may or may not. And I really don't think it's appropriate to criticise the operators for being in Spain, when in fact, if they were 50 or 100 miles away, then they would still not be there. They would still not be on the doorstep. And there's no requirement in the short-term let legislation for operators to be physically present or geographically present. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a home letting licence, Your Honours, which supports people being away. So from that point of view, I think we need to be very careful about the approach. Another thing I think we need to be careful about, Your Honours, and I'd already made the point about planning. there was a comment made about back doorway things have been granted. I take some issue with that, Your Honours. I think we have to be very careful to be sensible, not defamatory, and to be transparent. And in relation to this application, Your Honours, there's nothing backdoor about this application. It's made properly. Your Honours, council report confirms to you all of the statutory information is there. The notice was displayed, that's confirmed in the report. I think we just have to be very careful about some of the wording being used. In relation to the objections, Your Honours, the track is obviously an issue, and to clarify, the track is owned by the operators. The other properties round about have a right of access across the track. They are supposed to contribute to the upkeep of the track. Some operators have not done so. The track is properly maintained. You're hearing that the track isn't maintained, and that's simply not the case, Your Honours. I'm sure my clients would be more than happy if you wish to continue this and do a site visit, but the track is maintained. The track is cleared every 4 to 6 weeks. The track there's maintenance on the track, so when you go up the track, there are drains, wells across the track, Your Honours, which allow for anything coming down. As you've heard from the objectors, they live at the bottom of a hill, so things unfortunately run downhill, and that applies to the track. So there are trenches which catch some of this, and they are cleared out. There are edges to the track, and there are trenches dug there to get water away, and they're cleared out. In relation to storms and trees, Your Honours, I was brought up in the country. We always got stuck at least once in winter with trees falling down and blocking us in. That's just a matter of life in the country, Your Honours, and I don't think the fact that a tree falling down can be laid at the door of the operators as being some mismaintenance or lack of maintenance on their behalf. So every 4 to 6 weeks the track is maintained, and at the beginning of winter and the beginning of summer, additional maintenance is carried out on the track. The objectors have also said that there is no maintenance plan in place. My client has instructed me that they have emailed at least one of the objectors, Mr. and Mrs. Brocklehurst, about the track, and they have tried to put in place some kind of meeting or arrangement, and that's not in place. They are more than happy to do that, Your Honours. They are home every 2 to 3 months. If there are issues, they come home. When there was storms and storm damage, they came home. So one of them is home every 2 to 3 months, and they are also home if there is an issue. Not necessarily both of them at the one time, but certainly one of them will be. In relation to, therefore, getting a maintenance plan in place, they would be delighted to speak to the other neighbours, owners, and get that in place. And they would be delighted to formalise the input to that, because at present they pay the vast majority of the cost of keeping the track in order. As I said, they have somebody come out every 4 to 6 weeks. There was also remedial work done on it. It wasn't a contractor my clients chose. They were asked by other neighbours to use a specific contractor. They did so and regretted it. Apparently the contractor turned up late, finished late, and then didn't tidy up, whereas they had used someone else before who was more familiar with the track. So they've gone back to that person. So I appreciate your hearing opposing information, Your Honours, but that is the fact. I've seen videos. I didn't lodge it because I didn't think a video was particularly helpful, but I have seen on a call with my client every 4 to 6 weeks, there is a video sent of the track. So I've seen at least 3 of these going back over periods where the person maintaining the track, there was a digger out at one point digging out the trenches down the side. Somebody was brushing one of the small trenches that goes across the middle, and this was reported back. So if Your Honours doubt that, I'm more than happy to seek a continuation and have my clients lodge all of the videos going back a few years. I'm assured by them they have that. They're happy to do that. The track, again, Your Honours, is owned by them, and as far as they are concerned, they do upkeep it, and they do need to upkeep it for the business. But it is a country track, and while there may be health and safety concerns, these are met by the maintenance that they currently carry out. We've also heard a lot about the overuse of the track, Your Honours. I don't think that's the case. There was a calculation done by one of the objectors. It's sadly off. My clients would be delighted if they had 100% occupancy. Yes, they put an advert in the paper asking for a cleaner when they found their current cleaner, and they indicated certain figures, which was a maximum, Your Honours. That was a full occupancy figure. Yes, it's a busy turnover, and that's not queried, but there are 2 properties, Your Honours, although we're only considering 1. When people come to the property, they are generally staying for longer than 2 or 3 nights. We've heard it's 2 or 3 night stays. In fact, during summer particularly, people want to come for longer. It's a lovely property, it's got beautiful views, and it's a beautiful part of the country. So people come and stay. Quite often when people come, their habits change. We spend our time as daily people going to work, running errands, picking up children, then taking children to clubs. So actually, the use of the track from the people who are staying there is, in my submission to you, not considerably more than a normal family. They are not doing a school run, then doing a football run, then doing a brownie run. They are not going to Tesco, then having to go to the butcher. They are not going back and forward to work every day. And it is a small property. So in general, although there are 2, there will be a maximum of 2 cars there. So from that point of view, many families in the area will have at least 2 cars. So it is my submission to you that in relation to this application, Your Honours, there is not a significant increase in terms of the track. However, I have already addressed you on the maintenance, and it's important to remember that this property has been used for 4 years. So we are not talking about something which is new. The property has already been in use. We do not have, although the track is not adopted by the council, we do not have any roads complaints. We do not have any police objections. We do not have objections from environmental services, nor do we have objections from any antisocial behaviour team. So the fact is, this is not a new business where people are concerned about what might be coming. They know what is here. There are some objections, and I've addressed some of them already, but the fact is that the work has been put in place so that when the track needs maintenance, it gets done. We're also told that there is a cleaner who attends in vans. There is 1 cleaner, Your Honours, who attends in a small car. I've told you the gardener comes every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks during winter. I don't think that's unusual, Your Honours. I have neighbours who have gardeners who come on a not a regular basis. So again, I think trying to compare this and say it's putting so much more issue on the track is incorrect and to some extent unfair. I know that the Community Council aren't here, Your Honours, but they have lodged a letter of objection. I am a bit concerned about the fact that I wasn't able to identify any minutes or any background to the Community Council objection. Normally when we receive an objection, there are minutes available which outlines who attended the meeting and what was discussed at the meeting and what information was given to the meeting. The Dull and Ween Community Council Facebook page comes up in a Google search but won't open. They do have a Twitter page. Sorry, I'm very old. I think it's called X now, which I find very strange. But it's a Twitter page, and the pinned tweet is back to August 2022, and the tweet before that is December 2021. There are minutes available for a site called Issue, which has numerous Perth and Kinross Community Council minutes, but the only minutes available there date from 2021 to 22, and there are no more recent minutes. So again, Your Honours, I appreciate the person who wrote the letter of objection on behalf of the Community Council is entirely authorised to do so. I do have concerns about that being a representative of the whole of the village. One of the objectors also said no one in the village wants this, which is not the case. And also said the councillors at Perth and Kinross Council don't want this. There are no councillor objections, Your Honours. Councillors are perfectly entitled to object. It just means they can't sit on the committee to consider the application. So I think some of those statements are perhaps a little bit too sweeping. I'm
one of the councillors up there, and I would like to put on record that no one's spoken to me about any objection to this application, and neither have I got any opinion on this application. So I don't want my thoughts being misrepresented by that objection again. Thank you.
I'm obliged, Your Honours. In relation to the objection which I've referred to from the Community Council, there's suggestion that there are a whole number of issues. There are light pollution, there's increased traffic through the village. The fact is that there is increased traffic through the village from any form of tourists visiting the area, but people want tourists to come to the area. So to some extent, during summer, one would expect there to be an increase anyway, and one would expect that was welcome because that will support local businesses. There's a suggestion there's an adverse effect on the amenity of properties in the village. There is not an adverse effect, and there's no evidence to suggest that, Your Honours. So in relation to the Community Council objection, there are some very general comments made there, and my concern about that is there is no causal link between things like amenity to properties in the village and this property, and there's no evidence suggesting that there is in fact an adverse impact. So I think some of that has to be considered against that background. Mr Kaplan has objected, and some of his objection is planning, which, as I've indicated already, that's not appropriate. There's also mention of Stella, and as I've said, that's covered by a different licence. In relation to the documentation produced, the lights on the property are on a timer and go out at 10 p.m. The nearest property, which is why I've lodged the plan for you, to the Tabernacle is 85 metres away. So this is not a very compact estate where people are very, very close together and living with boundary lines a metre away from each other. So in terms of other applications I've dealt with where they are very, very close to neighbours and hot tubs and things are very close to neighbours, then I think it's important to highlight that. And also the hot tub here is not in a canopy, it's not under something. So again, if it's inclement weather, then quite often people don't want to use the hot tub. In relation to the objection, Your Honours, I think it's also important to say, and I appreciate that Mr Kaplan has said that there is a lot of confusion in defining short-term lets. I understand that as someone who's not involved in short-term lets and as an outsider, that's probably the case. But for this application, there is no confusion. This requires a short-term let licence. It has applied properly, and that's why we're here. The process is very clear, Your Honours. It's not muddy. It's been very clear since the Civic Government Scotland Act 1982, and it was clarified in the 2022 regulations. And while there may be issues with the order, the 2022 order, I don't think it's fair to say the process is not very clear. It is clear. In relation to the key box, that was a negative, but key boxes are more than acceptable. I completely appreciate in a block of 12 flats, having 12 key boxes is terribly unsightly. This is a one-off house and the key box is welcomed. In some of the reviews, guests actually say they like the key box check-in, they don't want a face-to-face check-in. We're told that there's daily occurrence of issues, but it's not a police matter. As I said, Your Honours, that leaves us between a rock and a hard place. It is a police matter. It is a council matter. My clients as operators are not being told this is a daily issue. They have no information. So they would ask the objectors to please communicate. And if there are issues, allow them to resolve those issues. And if they cannot be resolved, then yes, it's entirely appropriate that the police and the council get involved. But at the moment, we have no suggestion this property is not suitable because we do not have objections from police, council and antisocial behaviour. In relation to the objection by Mr Kaplan, he also mentions Legionnaire's disease and the hot tub. The hot tub is checked by the cleaner. There was one of the objections said something about a random cleaner. Again, Your Honours, the cleaner, as I've narrated to you, is extremely experienced. The hot tub has gone through the required statutory risk assessment and information, which must be lodged with you, and we've heard in your council report that's been done and that's in order. The hot tub is checked on every changeover. There are YouTube videos. There is a maintenance man comes out to check it. There is information on the hot tub in here which requires guests to carry out checks, which are perfectly normal if you have a hot tub at home. I understand you will also have to carry out the same checks. So it's not because it's a short-term let, it's because it's a hot tub. That is all checked before guest comes, it's checked before guest leaves, and guests are explained how to do those very simple checks while they are there. It is all in the YouTube videos, it is all in the guest booklet, it is all in information on the premises, and there are at least 3 people guests can call, and the operators can call if there is an issue with that. So again, I think we need to be very careful about making general comments about Legionnaire's disease and so on. In relation to Mr. and Mrs. Brocklehurst's objection, there's information here about the track, which I think I've covered. People arriving at all times of the day and night. Predominantly, Your Honours, people are arriving during daytime hours. If this property was inhabited by a family and the family happened to be made up of a nurse or a policeman or a fireman, they would also be appearing at all times of the day and night. I don't think there's a suggestion from the objector that every single person who comes here arrives at an inconvenient hour. There was some mention about somebody not being able to find the property. Again, guest journey, information given beforehand. Information is in the guest booklet, which is sent as an app before people arrive. They could search that to find out how to appear. There is information in here with photographs of how to get to it, how to drive up the track. What you see, and there's photographs, what you then do, where you turn. I have no sense of direction, Your Honours. My husband would tell you I do not know my right from my left. I think even I could find this because having looked at this, it's incredibly clear. If there is an issue with guests not finding it, please tell the operators. They can then identify why that's an issue. They can put up signage. They can do something to make sure guests are finding it. So if that is an issue, please tell the operators so they can address that, but they don't know at the moment, so they're not able to address it. Again, Your Honours, I think there was some questions about planning and so on in the objection from Mr. and Mrs. Brocklehurst, but again, Your Honours, planning is not something which is relevant today. And again, Your Honours, when the caravan was first put up, there's fencing being installed here to keep the noise or even just noise during the day from the neighbours. They also moved 20 mature trees. So they didn't cut them down. They uprooted them and moved 20 mature silver birch trees to try to, again, block off any noise. And that's not noise in the evening, Your Honours, that's noise from the general guests. If there was any noise, that's steps that have been taken to try to block that off. There was also some suggestion that there was fairy lights and noise light pollution here. There are no fairy lights at the Tabernacle. There is some very low level deck lighting, but there are no fairy lights at the Tabernacle property. If there are fairy lights on another property, then that is dealt with by another licence and would have to be dealt with through a complaint in relation to that. But I'm advised that there is deck lights and there is no fairy lights and the lights all go off on a timer at 10 o'clock. My clients acknowledged that in the early days of operation, they had issues with guests messing about with timers, and also occasionally that is thrown out by power cuts. They have since put the timers aside. The guests cannot now access these light timers, and if there is a power cut, one of the team will go up and make sure that the timer is reset and that the lights are going off at 11. And it even says in here, please don't fiddle with the lighting settings and please don't fiddle with the controls in the properties. It's use of plain English, I suppose, Your Honours, but it's very, very clear in the guest guidebook that they are asking people to go with the settings, and if they have questions about that, to ask. I'm not sure there's more I can cover, Your Honours. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I'm obliged.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Ms Miller? Councillor Carr?
Thank you. Couple of queries. Firstly, the handbook that you handed out is quite substantial, and as you quite rightly pointed out, it's highly unlikely that anybody would spend time going through that number of pages. I've got a concern within the handbook is that there's no index on that. So if anybody was to get that handbook and try and fire through, they might struggle to find areas. Another point within that.
It's because they don't get it in this form. So I've printed this for you as a PDF so you can see this, because I couldn't bring X number of tablets and let you have it electronically. The guest actually gets this electronically. So there is information in a much more palatable form in the property for guests about the local area, about how to work things. But this particular guest book actually comes to you and you download it as an app. So you get a link and you download it to your phone as an app. I appreciate that means you need to have a smartphone, but there is other information in the property. If you're not of a smartphone desire to use one, and you simply don't want to have to engage with tech, that's fine. This information in a much nicer format is available for you in the property. But for this, if this guest book will come to you as an app and it has a search function. And as I said, if you want to find out about the hob, you type in hob. If you want to find out about the hot tub, you type in hot tub. If you want to remind yourself of the rules, you type in rules. So the rules and everything else is in a paper form, not like this. But this is really doesn't have an index because it's kind of looks a bit strange when you print it, to be honest, but it has a search function.
Thank you for that answer. I know that I do have trouble opening PDFs in my smartphone as well, so the whatever's in the property might have been handy for us today. The other query I have, after looking through the booklet and finding the information on the hot tub, earlier on you said that the hot tub was the responsibility of the cleaner, yet in this handbook it seems to point to the fact that the responsibility of the hot tub is clearly in the hands of whoever it is that comes, and that information also follows a disclaimer basically saying that if they do not follow those details, then it's not the responsibility. So it seems that the responsibility of the hot tub isn't with a cleaner, but it's with the whoever it is that uses the property. So clarification on that might be handy. Thank you.
I'm obliged. Yeah, so the cleaner deals with the hot tub at the changeover point. So at the point at which the previous guests have left, the cleaner comes in and does all of the checks. And on each occasion that they leave, the cleaner then sends a photograph to my clients of the hot tub cleaned. And I should perhaps have lodged it. I didn't lodge it because I wasn't sure of the value of a picture of a hot tub with clean water, but that's what I've seen. Every time there's a changeover, there's a picture goes back to my clients of the hot tub checked and the clean water, and it's immaculate. The tests are done by the cleaner at that point. So there's two levels of tests that you would do with a hot tub. You would do some which are more involved, and you would do some which is for the people who are coming to visit. The disclaimer is absolutely necessary. If the disclaimer is not there, then my clients would open themselves up to claims. And unfortunately, we are in a world and an era today where people throw themselves in front of stationary cars and claim they've been knocked down. So from that point of view, it's probably largely my profession's fault that everybody is advised to have disclaimers for everything. My local PTA had a fair recently, and on the baking stall there was a disclaimer about nuts and gluten and all sorts of things. That's the stage we're at. Had the clients not had that, I would have advised them to put it in. It is absolutely necessary. If guests are going to use the hot tub, they have to do so in a sensible manner. It has to be explained to them what they need to do, but they need to do so in a sensible manner. And they also need to understand that for the period of time they are there, then the hot tub is their responsibility. And I have to say, every single client I have who I have either reviewed their terms and conditions, reviewed their guidebook, or had need to ask them about their hot tub, that's what is done. That's the advice given by the hot tub manufacturers or installers. That's the advice I would give, and that is what needs done. So yes, the people who are using the hot tub need to take some responsibility. That is made clear to them, and it is very clear in this what they need to do. That perhaps makes it sound a bit more complicated and scary than it actually is. But yes, while they are there, they do need to take responsibility for it. But the cleaner does do the tests and checks on changeover, and as soon as the people leave, the cleaner does it again. There are no operators I know of who has someone coming out. I appreciate the last lady said you have a swimming pool and she does back flushing, which sounds very complicated every second day. The hot tub things are not complicated. It's like tablets or dip tests. I don't know anyone who has a hot tub who has someone come out every day. People have maintenance contracts, but to get someone to do that daily would be prohibitively expensive.
Thank you for your answer to that. I was listening very carefully to what you're saying because I was wanting to bring that question up, and you were alluding to the fact that the cleaner did check when the cleaner came out on a daily basis. And I do still have concerns about the fact that the information around the hot tub is tucked inside a 100-page booklet there, regardless of how easy that is to get that on a smartphone, and also whatever search you would need to do to get that. It would then be obviously somebody would need to know that they have to look up that information on the hot tub. But thank you for your answer.
That information is in the premises, Your Honour, so it's not just relying on an online app. The online app is to make it easy for people who like an app and don't want to read things. There is that information in the premises. It's also on the YouTube channel. There is detailed videos on how to do things, including in relation to the hot tub. I apologise if I suggested the cleaner comes out daily. The cleaner does not come out daily. The cleaner comes out on changeover days and deals with the hot tub then. If there was a longer stay, the cleaner might come out again in between, but certainly the cleaner's not there daily.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your comprehensive deputation. Just to pick you up on one of the things that you did mention in your deputation, you mentioned rock in a hard place a couple of times, but in your earlier review, you mentioned that, well, let me come to that a second. I'm just going to ask you the question. Is it the responsibility of the neighbours to deal with antisocial behaviour?
No, Your Honours, but the difficulty we have here is that we have no knowledge of the antisocial behaviour. And as I've said, home letting, secondary letting, people don't live beside the properties. If we're not asking the neighbours, specifically not asking the neighbours to proxy manage, and I know that was a terminology used by them. The point here is that if they tell the operators there's an issue, the operators want to sort any issues. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with antisocial behaviour. I don't think there is antisocial behaviour here, and we don't have a report that says that.
So coming to my point really was, you said earlier on, they must communicate with your clients. Is that not proxy management?
No, Your Honours, that's somebody going to your neighbour and saying we have a problem, and just because the neighbour happens to live in Spain, they are the owners. So if my neighbour had a problem at their premises, or if they'd gone away on holiday and their son was having a party, I'd be texting my neighbour to say there's a problem. There's people in the garden and it's midnight, and can we do something about this, please? Because I know she would be straight on the phone to her son to say that's not on. And that's what my clients need. They're not being asked to manage. They're being asked that if there's a problem, yes, you're perfectly entitled to bring an objection to this formal setting, but there's no point bringing an objection saying there's a problem. My clients are not telepathic. Yes, they don't live there, but neither does a huge percentage of short-term let operators. If there's going to be criticism about not taking action, that criticism, I think, in my submission, needs to come after proper communication. So if there's an issue, please tell the operators so they can try and address it. Really not asking the objectors to put themselves out. It's entirely up to them. But I don't think it's fair to come and say, there are problems, but we didn't tell anyone.
And my final point, if it's okay, Mike, just to follow on, is the big criticism or the big objection, it appeared to me, was that there was a lack of a management team. And you made it clear in your deputation that there was indeed a management team, and you mentioned various members. Was it John Campbell, Boats of Cluny? Somebody called Karen, who was the managing agent. I'm sitting strategically to see somebody nearly fall off a chair when you mentioned those names. Why don't the people who live there know who the management team is?
In terms of that, Your Honours, my clients have taken the view that they would prefer any complaints and anything to come through them. And whether or not that's correct, they regard that as good management. The objector has said that, in fairness, my clients always respond quickly, and there might be a gap where they go off and take the guest's view, contact the guest, try to resolve an issue. Their view is that they want to be able to have the control. They don't go anywhere they can't be contacted. It's their business, it's their baby, and they want to be the ones that are dealing with things, and they will then decide who best to deal with it. And if there was a management company involved, there would be one number which would go through to one person who would then divert you off to the correct person, whether that was the cleaner, the grounds person, the plumber, the electrician. So from that point of view, that's really what they're doing. I have suggested to them that a backup number or two is provided, and they said they're more than happy to do that, and they're going to go off and speak to the team that we referred to. It was something I spoke to them about when we had a final preparation meeting yesterday. So they are going to go and speak to these people to see about them giving their numbers. But certainly the reason they're doing it is not out of bad management, it's out of good management. It's the management model where one person gets the call and decides the best person to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Thank you for your deputation. I'm just following on from what Councillor Allen said. Obviously, if there's a situation where the electrics fail or the hot tub won't switch on or whatever, WhatsApp the owners, they get on touch with the electrician or whatever. But if we're dealing with a situation where there could be not, but I said it's not been reported. Let's take the assumption that antisocial behaviour, it's noise or it's a fire, as mentioned here, loud music. We can't expect John the gardener or whoever it was to go and sort out antisocial behaviour. Wouldn't it be better for your clients really to have a formal management company in place in the UK, which would do all this problem, so that the local residents can ring up and say, oh, there's a problem with noise, or the tenants incoming, people letting the place, hot tubs not working, or the electrics are failed, whatever. It's just really so much easier to just have a UK-based or local management company to deal with all this, including any antisocial behaviour. Wouldn't that be a better way of dealing with it, and better for the local residents as well?
It is all local people who are used, Your Honour. So the fact is that in relation to the team that they have, Canon Banyard, for example, manages local property and is regarded as a co-host. So the team that they have is exactly the equivalent of a management company, and the operator should not be criticised because they've decided not to go with a management company. I have a number of clients who went with management companies and found them to be not terribly good, and have taken the management back and instead have put exactly in place what the operators here have, a team of local, reliable people. So no, in terms of antisocial behaviour, yes, if there is an issue, then we've got 2 people who reside in the village of Dull who will go up and sort that out. There is the handyman who is local and will go up and see if there is antisocial behaviour. Obviously, even if my clients were living on site, if there is antisocial behaviour, that's not necessarily appropriate for them to sort out. If there was something really serious, the police would be called, and that's a judgment call, but it's a judgment call they can only make once they're given information. So they need to speak to the guests. If the guests aren't complying, they need to know that. They need to then send someone up. They have an excellent management team. Their management team is probably stronger than most managing agents because they have all these people who are local, people who live physically locally. A lot of management companies do not have somebody who can walk out their front door in the snow and still get to your property. So what we have here is actually better than that. It is physical on the ground, boots on the ground. It is people who can go up, but it's also people they know and they rely on, and not a nameless management company that they're just not very sure of. So they've taken the view that's best management. And as I say, I have some other clients who have taken the same view after bad experiences.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, I've got one question. You mentioned, please remind me, did you mention earlier in your submission that your client has a video system where they can monitor the noise externally? Is that correct?
They have CCTV where it has a speaker. The CCTV covers the parking area, but the speaker picks up noise from the back of the property, so they can hear if there is noise.
Do you have any idea, therefore, of how many times you've actually picked up noise and had to phone up clients within the property to just tell them to cool the noise down a bit?
Very few, because unfortunately they're not being told about the noise, so they're not it's not a trigger. It's not like a Ring doorbell, which gives you a trigger every time there's noise. When they've checked it, there haven't been problems. I think on one occasion they'd heard something and phoned a guest and identified whether there was an issue. But if they are told, then they can go on and do that. So they do check it. This is part of the problem of they are not being told when there is a noise issue, and they obviously don't check it. They're not sitting watching it 24 hours a day or listening to it 24 hours a day. And because, as I say, it's not like a Ring doorbell, which gives you an alert. And because they've not been made aware, they could put in a noise monitoring system. If noise is a genuine issue in this property, then they will. But we need to get to the point where we know noise is a genuine issue. And because they're not being made aware of that, then with the best of intention from the objectors or the neighbours, actually there needs to be ramped up increased communication, so everyone's absolutely transparent on when there's noise and action can be taken accordingly.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Ms. Miller? Councillor Stewart.
One of the concerns was obviously noise. We've discussed that at length, but also light pollution. Why are the lights left on till 10 o'clock at night?
From a health and safety point of view, there's very low level lights on the deck, and there's lights above the beside the hot tub. So basically, from a health and safety perspective, 10 o'clock at night is when most councils or most noise teams would say that there shouldn't then be any excessive noise. For example, street cafe areas for licensed premises across Scotland are all tidied away by 10 o'clock at night. So they took the view that that was a sensible time to then have the lights switch off, almost as a message. It's in the documentation, it's in the guest contract, but to reiterate that, and guests are told 10 o'clock at night is the cut-off, so they're well aware of that.
Okay. Thanks very much. Are there any further questions for Ms. Miller? No further questions. So Ms. Miller, could I therefore invite Dr. Kaplan to sum up, please?
Here we go. Okay. There was so much in there. It'd be very hard for me to challenge it all in one go, and I'm not going to even try. This is an unmanaged business, and that team of people, they must be wearing camouflage uniforms, because there's no visible evidence of a large number of people coming to manage that site. But I have noticed in the last few weeks, 1 or 2 extra people. So I think that this process in itself has generated that. But in reality, there's not a team, and they're not managed. And the consequence, I fully appreciate that they have been trying. You can see that they're trying to try and achieve something. It doesn't work. And they need to have something that's sort of structured and organized to make it work properly. And this just doesn't wash, I'm afraid. The track is a disaster. Whatever you say, the track is a mess. And the lights are on. That's all I'll say.
Thank you. Could I please invite Bottlehurst, please, to sum up?
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to come back on a couple of specifics before I sum up. So I think you mentioned, and I didn't want to get into tit for tat, but I think you said that there was only one complaint about the noise at night. I don't have complaints about the noise during the day. I only have complaints about noise at night. But I quickly scanned through my messages and started in 2021, when in May 21, June 21, July 21, and then the 6th of October 21, and they were just the ones that jumped out at me. I messaged to ask for the noise to be turned down because it was antisocial. So that, I'm not saying it wasn't done, it was done on all of those occasions, but I guess it comes back to one of the points made earlier around, is it my responsibility to deal with antisocial behaviour? Then again, I didn't want to get into tit for tat, but I feel we're at that place a bit now. Therefore, having sat through all that, on the 7th of October in 2021, and I've only gone through 2021, I can't really face going through the rest. On the 7th of October, I did message to say, could you ask one of your visitors, your guest has just zoomed down the track and just about taken, I can't remember who it was, a child or a dog out, and was told that that was my responsibility. I said, could you have a word with them and ask them to drive more carefully, and was told the suggestion was that that was my responsibility to talk to that person if I felt that they were driving unsafely. I said I didn't feel safe doing that because in fact on that occasion it was a group of men who I could hear in the hot tub. I said I didn't want to do that, go up and take on these guys on my own and say, could you stop driving fast? And I think Nikki did then come back and say, okay, I've spoken to them, that's done. So, you know, I'm only getting into that to say there isn't one occasion where we've had to raise the noise. And as I said before, it does get a bit boring sitting out on a Saturday night going, can you tell people to turn the music off? I have to, you know, tell my own children to do things enough. I don't really want to have to sort of ask other people not to do things. And you know, I sort of feel it is partly our responsibility to do, you know, the implication is it's our responsibility to flag these issues so that they can be dealt with, which is like a long process. And then the other thing I would contest, I mean, not contest, challenge is I've never heard of the management team. So if there is a management team in place, it would have been super helpful to know about them before today. As you know, that is a list of people, some of whom we know who live in the village, some of whom go to our children's school, and I've never seen any of them at the house, but that's fine. I do work full-time from home, and in fact my office is in the garden, so very near. That's not to say that they're not there, but if there is a management team, it would be super helpful to know what their remit is, what their responsibility is, to have a conversation with us about what all these people are doing. I mean, that's a lot of people going up and down, but as far as I can tell, I mean, I think, quote, you said they have an excellent management company. Well, I didn't know that, and there's no evidence of it so far. So my conclusion really is, you know, it's a shame it's got to this point. The management is clearly an issue. If there is now a management team, which I'm sceptical of, having never heard nor seen of them until today, then that management team needs to be run properly if this license is given, and you know, or a management team of some form needs to be run properly, and it would be really helpful to share that with the neighbours and other people in the village so that everybody knows what the situation is for these businesses. I know we're only speaking about one today, but that's also part of our frustration because there are two businesses there, which I know is irrelevant and I'm not allowed to speak about. So my first one is around the management. I remain concerned about that, but I think something could be done about that. The second one is the track. If there is a maintenance plan in place for the track, I have never heard about it or seen it until today. So I am surprised and gobsmacked, in fact, because I got a puncture on the track last week, 10 days ago. So the maintenance plan is perhaps not working as well as it should because the track is still completely gobbed. If there is a plan, it would be helpful to know about that and also agree what is going to be done to put the track back into place. And that is the responsibility of the people who own the track. We are happy to, as I said before, contribute to it. If we're having a conversation about it, it needs to be when people are here. I'm not going to go back and forward on that in any more detail, but I think that still remains an issue. And then my third and kind of final point is around this sort of the point around multiple other further developments on that site, which I understand, I know isn't something that you can do today, but I do want it kind of logged that my husband and I remain concerned about the sort of potential further development of either other businesses or other hot tubs swimming pools, whatever, water slides that want to be put into the property, because this stuff is done in a piecemeal way, which has meant we're at the situation that we're at now, where there isn't a kind of master plan. But I recognise that that's not something that you can necessarily do today.
Would you briefly sum up for us, please?
Obliged, Your Honours. Your Honours, in relation to some master plan, if my clients have a master plan for their business, that's their master plan, and they will require to come before planning and licensing and get the appropriate consents. And yes, there is a sensibility in speaking to neighbours about certain things, but Your Honours, I think there has to be some cognizance. We've had objectors say this is a business, and that's seen as a negative. It's not a negative, it is a business. No one is saying it's not a business. But I think the issue here, Your Honours, is that yes, it is a business. My clients run it as such. They do have a management team in place. It is not up to them. If there was a management company in place, the management company and all of its employees and anyone who might have anything to do with this would not be out with round the local neighbours or in the village holding a public meeting or introducing themselves. Fact is that there is a management team. I have discussed with my clients the sensibility of having a couple of other numbers and names available, and they are speaking to those relevant people to put that in place. Mr. Kaplan said that no one comes in droves. There is no team and it's not managed. And yet his letter of objection, one of the main things he has an issue with is the number of people coming back and forward, the number of changeovers every year. He says and said again in his objection that the village with a current total population of about 60 people, and for going back for at least a millennium and probably more, in the 1951 census, Your Honours, the village had 2,055 people living in it. It has not always been a village of 60 people. But the fact is that his objection is there are too many people coming to the property, including cleaners, gardeners, and so on. And somebody else said that in their objection as well. So we cannot have it both ways, Your Honours. There are either cleaners and gardeners coming, or there is no team. I've made it clear to you that there is a team of people. No, they have not all been introduced. Yes, my clients are looking at providing additional names and additional numbers to the neighbours and the objectors. In relation to some of the noise complaints, Your Honours, I understand they were in relation to the other premises. I think the issue here is to go forward positively, Your Honours, in relation to the trap. My clients are hearing this when they're home. They will have a discussion with not just the objectors, but the people who have a common interest in the track and try to come to a formal agreement on the maintenance of the track. It is done every 4 to 6 weeks. Happy for you to continue this, and we'll produce all of the videos to you. But the fact is that they are keen to ensure that there is transparency and they do all work together. They are also keen to ensure that everyone who is supposed to contribute to the track and the maintenance costs actually do so. The premises are managed, Your Honours. We've given you a lot of information. There is good management and control in place. There's not just a guidebook that you download and that's unworkable as a PDF. It's not a PDF, it's an app. All of that information is in the property. There is people who can come, who can be there, which is better than a management company. They cannot provide people who can walk up to the premises in the snow. What my clients are asking for is that, very similar to the last application, there is communication, and that if there are issues, the issues can be identified and therefore fixed. And I understand that there's some frustration with the track and can it be fixed? Well, we won't know until we all sit down round a table and try and sort it out. Same if there is noise. There's lots of very clever noise things can be put in place now, Your Honours, and there's opportunity to do that, but we can't do that unless we know that there is actually a noise issue. So the position here, Your Honours, is to go forward positively, to be able to continue to operate what is an accepted, transparent, well-managed business, but to be able to do that in conjunction with the people who live and exist around about that business, hand in hand. I'm obliged.
Thank you very much. Do members wish to adjourn for further discussion? Yes, yes. Yep, okay. Okay, is everybody back? Yes, we're all back. Okay. My motion is to grant a license along with which contains the following conditions. There'll be no amplified music to be played in the garden. No social gatherings in the garden after 10 p.m. The license holder must take reasonable steps to ensure that no disturbance or nuisance arises within or from the premises, for example, by explaining the house rules to guests. Deal effectively with any disturbance or nuisance arising within or from the premises as soon as practical after the license holder is made aware. And finally, the license holder must share the contact details of the local management agent with the neighbours. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Are there any amendments? If there are no amendments, the license is granted along with the conditions outlined both in the paper and the ones I've just outlined. Okay, thank you. Could I also express some concerns about the hot tub maintenance at changeovers? It might be advisable to contact the environmental health to seek this within the council to get their guidance on how often the hot tubs should be tested. I think that would be of some benefit. Okay. Thank you. So that closes the meeting today. Thank you very, very much for your patience, everybody.